All right, man. Well, let's kick this. So today, Former Exercise Podcast, it's really cool. Again, I want to point out to people that, because no one knows except for you and I now and Chris Rothblatt, that I had a podcast scheduled today and it fell through last minute. No big deal. But Chris Rothblatt, my buddy, who's also been on the podcast, he's like one of the first 10 guys. He was one of the guys I interviewed during my road trip when I first started the podcast. Reached out to me, was like, hey, I got this guy who'd be perfect. So we've actually never even spoken until like just a few minutes ago. You just happened to be like available for the show and everything. So thank you for coming on. Welcome to the Former Exercise Podcast. And I'd like you to go ahead. You are, what I've read online, what I've been able to dig up about you in the last few minutes is that you're retired Green Beret engineer sergeant and that you were a sniper as well. So
correct.
We can get through all that. Start at the beginning though. I'd like to know where you're from, why you decided to join the Army specifically, and what drove you to go SF.
Oh, okay. Yeah, man. No worries. So I'm originally from Oregon. Grew up in a really, really small town up in the hills. And I guess like anybody else, I just wanted to get the hell out of there. You know, I got two older brothers that were in the Marines. They actually joined the Marines before me. You know, they're just a couple years older. And so that was one of the things I looked at doing. I was like, man, I ought to go in the Marines. That's what I need to do. And so I drank the Marine Corps Kool-Aid. And then the weekend before I went to MEPS for the Marine Corps, I went out walking on some railroad tracks and shot a shotgun. And it kind of blew out some of the hearing in one of my ears before I went down there. And so the Marines denied me based on the hearing test at MEPS. They were like, nope, you're no good. Oh, really?
Damn.
Yeah, dude. Yeah. I should turn that off. Sorry
no, that's
about
okay.
that. And so, yeah, you know, I had the Marines that I was really looking forward to going into because I had my brothers that were doing that. And when the Marines denied me, it kind of broke my heart. That was the one thing I always looked at. And I was like, yeah, this is what I'm going to do after high school. I'm going to be a Marine, rock, you know, like whatever. And I felt like your average 18-year-old. But then they denied me. It broke my heart. And I was talking with my mom one day on the phone as I was driving, and she's like, hey, well, why don't you look at joining the Army? I was like, those guys are retards.
That's funny.
Like, they don't want to join the Army. They're all retards. And anyway, she pushed me and she convinced me to go give it a try. So I signed up in the Army Infantry, not knowing, and took off in May of 2003 to Infantry Basic in Fort Benning, Georgia. Yeah.
So so it's funny because when I joined, I was initially wanting to join the Army because my dad was in the Army, and I grew up, you know, seeing like John Wayne, the Green Berets, and, you know, hearing the Ballad of the Green Beret and all that stuff, and that was like my thing. I was like, I'm gonna go join the Army. I'll be a Ranger, maybe Green Beret, you know. And then I read Carlos Hathcock's book, The Sniper, and that right there, like after reading that, it made me switch, like my whole thinking. I can't imagine, like, I know how you felt about because when you're young and you're set on something like the Marine Corps, you know, that's a very specific thing, and it had to have been really heartbreaking to
it actually was.
Yeah.
It actually was. Like, I remember when I got the phone call from the crew that was like, yeah, bro, it's not going to happen for you. I'm sorry. And I was actually like heartbroken. I didn't know what to do with myself. It was like my life's plans for the last 2 years when you're, 17. It's a big chunk of your life.
Yeah, for sure.
And I was like, yeah. So it really did break my heart, but I'm glad it worked out the way it did. Like everything happens for a reason, I suppose.
So I recently had another Army dude on that was infantry talk about his time. For me, it's interesting, and a lot of Marines don't understand how the Army kind of works, I guess, because you guys have different boot camps based on your MOS. Like some people go to Fort Sill, some people go to Fort Benning, some people go to Fort what's the one, the easy one, the one that everybody makes, Relax in Jackson.
Because so many of them. There's so many of them. Like you guys got like MCRD San Diego and Parris Island.
Yeah.
Like that you got. That's it.
So yeah, there's so many. Do the boot camps in the Army, any of them? I mean, I guess Fort Benning definitely would, but outside of that, any of them have like that storied history that people look upon, kind of like MCRD San Diego or Parris Island?
Not really, man. I mean, like we've got the infantry basic, and that's like the no shit go to. But other than that, like there's no like famed or storied as far as I'm aware of. Like there's just
so
not.
When you came in. Did you come in as a 18 X-ray, the contract SF, or did you go infantry 2 later on to the?
Yes.
SF?
Yeah. So I actually came in as an 11 X-ray,
11 X-ray.
which was so the Army's got 11 Bravos and 11 Charlies, and they had another one back then. I think they had just switched it over. But when you sign up on like the 11X contract, it basically means when you get to basic training that they're going to decide whether or not you're going to be an infantryman or a mortarman or, it was like an anti-tank specialist, I think was the other one, anti-armor specialist. And yeah, I was literally up to, I mean, at this time, like the war just kicked off. So there was a shit ton of people that were pouring in. The war in Iraq had just kicked off. So there's a ton of people just pouring in. And we would stand in line for chow for like 3 hours, like at the in processing center of this place. It was just insane, going from parade rest to attention and taking a step forward for like 3 hours for one meal. Right in the middle of like that chow line, they just kind of put us all at attention, counted off numbers of, went back in formation, counted off, separated us. And they were like, everybody on this side is 11 Bravo. Everybody on this side is 11 Charlie. And I just happened to make the 11 Bravo side of the house. And I remember being like asking a buddy later, I was like, what the hell does that even mean? Like, what just happened? And they're like, well, those guys are going to go fire mortars, but we got to stay in the infantry. I was like, well, that's what I signed up for anyways. Like, why is this a thing?
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, yeah. So I didn't even know what the hell I was getting into.
Yeah. I mean, how can you really know, unless you have unless your parent is active duty, I guess that's the closest of being able to relate or talk to someone about like what it's going to be like. I felt like I knew a lot because my dad was in the Army and I used to watch all these military movies. So I kind of understood going into it, like, hey, the military is going to own me. Like I don't have a say for 4 years.
Right.
It's like whatever they want to do is like what we have to go do. And I think a lot of people don't understand that. And I think that's probably the biggest lesson you have to understand before you sign that contract, that it's no longer about you or what you think is correct or right. It doesn't matter anymore because, especially as a boot, no one cares.
Oh yeah, dude, you don't get to say anything.
Yeah. So how was life in the infantry like when you first got there? Can you kind of describe that? Because we do have some Marine infantrymen that listen to this podcast. Shout out to those guys. And I know that for them, showing up to the, getting to the fleet and showing up to their unit for the first time, checking in as a boot infantryman is kind of a rough go. I imagine it's the same in the Army infantry. If you want to talk about that.
Oh, bro. Yeah, the barracks are a freaking, like at nighttime in the barracks, that's when the crazy shit goes down. Like daytime NCOs roaming around, they kind of like keep it quelled down just a little bit, you know what I mean? But yeah, there was a tradition that was going on in my unit where you'd get taped up, you'd get a pink belly, and dudes would shave your head. We would have guys. I remember one night I came back from drinking, and there was one of my buddies that was his birthday, and they had him taped to. There was a set of pull-up bars outside the barracks, and they had him like duct taped to the pull-up bars with his pants down and a chem light that was broken sticking out of his butt crack because it was his birthday.
That is true, friendship and love right there.
Yeah, right. But I don't think stuff like that goes down anymore, which is a huge, like, I know for a fact stuff like that doesn't go down anymore. But I mean, that would
be a sexual assault case immediately if that was found.
Oh yeah, sure, yeah. The guy would get out. And, I don't know, man.
Was he a willing participant?
Funny. Hell no, dude. They drug him out, kicking and screaming. They took him to the pole.
I remember seeing a dude get teabagged in MOS school. He was sleeping and another dude like crawled on top of him and like gently laid his balls on his face, and I just watched him like lay down, and he woke up and like it killed me to see it because he eyes open and there's a ball sack laying on his face, and he smacks it with his hand and it flies out, the balls do, and they come back and hit him in the face again. And I'm like, oh my fucking God. And the thing was, these dudes, the dude that did it was just trying to do it to me because I was asleep. I was like, get the fuck off me, bro. I'm like, what are you doing, man? And then he went over and fucked with that other kid. That guy that did it, which is, I don't condone that. I think that's fucked up. I thought it was fucked up when he did it to that dude. The dude that did it didn't even make it out of MOS school. He got kicked out for, alcohol-related incidents before he even left school. So big surprise there, I guess. But
yeah, dude. I love like all the little funny games. Like we used to like when I was in Ranger school, like and dudes are sitting down like whenever the RIs aren't looking at dudes like ruck flop or they're laying down or like they drop their ruck and they're pulling security. It happened to me one time. I like opened up my ruck and I just found that I had been carrying probably like 5 pounds worth of rocks. Like dudes were just putting like little rocks in my rucksack randomly over time. And so that was like one of the games we'd play on each other. It was just going around and like just slowly dropping in rocks and stuff. But yeah, I kind of miss all that kind of those shenanigans.
It's like the whole frat boy experience, but not being in a
Yeah.
fraternity. It's like I was thinking about it the other day. It was like being in the being in the Marine Corps, it allows you to be like a young dumb person for like as long as you're in the military. Not you know what I'm
Sure.
saying. Like you can fuck around with your friends and it's not like necessarily frowned upon. It's like as an adult out in the real world, if you mess around with your friends, people are like, we're adults. Why are you, what are you doing? But in the military, it's like, God, but you kind of have to blow off steam because of all the bullshit you deal with.
Oh hell yeah, dude! Like and it was funny because when I went from like infantry to SF, I remember I was on a trip and we had determined that our workspace that we were at, like our little computer spot, was like our safe zone that like you don't fuck with. Like that's our safe zone. Don't mess with it. And one of my buddies left his ID card on his desk, because you have to slide it into the computer to get access or whatever at this point. And I had like gone over and he left it laying out. So I'd gone over and like with a permanent marker, had drawn like a dick on his forehead and like, coming in and squirting out everywhere and stuff. And he was so butthurt, dude. He was so butthurt, but he's like, Matt, I thought we talked about this being, like our place where we weren't going to do stuff like this and we could leave our stuff alone and it wouldn't get messed with. And I was like, I was just trying to lighten the mood, like we're in Afghanistan. Yeah. I'm trying to lighten the mood. Like you're taking this the wrong way. So it's, that was weird to me.
I will say I had the one time I got pissed off at a dude for fucking around with me. We were on ship and I went to go log into a computer and I couldn't log in and my shit wasn't working. And he had taken a piece of fucking clear tape and put it over the chip, but he cut it out the square so you couldn't even tell it was a piece of tape over the chip. Well, the thing was, whatever. Everyone gets got by that at some point. But he never told me that's what he did. He let it ride. So for 24 hours, I was like, they were talking about maybe having to make me go to shore to get a new ID card because you can't get an ID card while you're on ship, obviously. And
that sucks.
So it was like this whole thing. And then I think he came in when I was talking to someone about it. And he's like, oh, shit, you didn't know? And then he kind of tried to apologize. But I'm like, bro, for fucking 24 hours, like I'm over here trying to do work and stuff. There's like mission planning, like, all this stuff going on while we're on ship. And now it's cool if you mess around for a few minutes, but damn. But anyways, so you were in the infantry. Obviously you got messed around, you got messed with and stuff like that. That's what everybody does when they first come in the military, especially in the combat arms. How was the training though? Like once you got past all that kind of bullshit, let's say you're however far into it, a little bit of time spent in your unit. How did you feel like the training was, and how did you feel like your infantry training and boot camp and stuff prepared you for being an infantryman at your unit?
Yeah, so I didn't really understand what the hell we were doing in boot camp, like half the time, or basic, Army's basic training. Right? So I didn't really understand half the crap that we were doing there. Like I remember running the battle drills, going through infantry school, and just not quite understanding like the role of it. And then once I got to my unit, I more or less understood over time what was actually happening, and I could like relate back and see what it was. And two, like the training that I think infantrymen are getting these days is so drastically different than what we had back then. Because back then we were just running our basic, I think it was FM 7-8 was like the infantry handbook for the Army, if I remember correctly. And that has evolved like so drastically. We're talking like Vietnam style tactics, like get down, return fire, team leader move forward, assess the situation, report to squad leader, flank, all those different things. We had battle drills, enter building, clear room, clearing trenches, all of that crap. And it's like breach, mine, wire, obstacle. And that was kind of like the focus of the training back then. And then when you look at like where the wars were at and what we were actually fighting in the wars, it had absolutely nothing to do with the training that we were doing. So our training really didn't start to evolve until combat vets started like coming back in and getting embedded into like the units. And then the training just slowly adjusted over the years. And then a new FM came out and it just kind of started evolving a little bit from there.
Yeah, for sure. The training, I mean, if that's, I guess the silver lining of 20 years of war in the Middle East and Afghanistan and Iraq is we've become very good at, being at war. I guess not, depending on who you talk to, I suppose.
Yeah, no, for sure. Like 110%.
So how long were you in the infantry before you decided like, hey man, this is cool, but I want to do something else? Like, did you consider anything outside of like maybe Rangers first or SF first or anything like that?
Yeah, so I got back from a deployment from Iraq, and we had like a huge sniper problem that was taking place over there, about in and around Kirkuk. And I was like, holy shit, that's like the effect that these guys had on the battlefield, like just a couple guys with guns, the effect that they had in halting our battalion level operations and stuff. I was like, that's huge.
Yeah.
And so when I got back from that trip, me and a couple buddies were like, yeah, fuck it, let's go into a sniper section. So the Army infantry, you can still hold your infantry MOS, and then you go and you try out for a sniper section within your unit, go into that, then go through sniper training, whatever the case may be, and then you can go out like that. And so that's what I did first. Was I went from infantry to sniper, inside of the infantry, and then when I was in the sniper section, I went to ranger school. And after I got done with ranger school, I was like, well, shit, that wasn't as bad as I thought it'd be.
Oh, really?
I was like, it's kind of like yeah, I actually really liked it, man. I had fun. Like I'm like a glutton for punishment, But so yeah, I got back from ranger school. I was like, shit, that wasn't that bad, Like it had been talked up. I remember guys like in my infantry units like coming back with their ranger tabs and be like, those dudes are badasses. I can't believe they've been through that. And then after I was able to go and experience it and go through it, I was like, well, that's actually kind of fun. I really enjoy being around these people. Don't get me wrong, I didn't enjoy like the starvation and sleep deprivation aspect of it, but being around like that caliber of people.
Yeah.
It's to me, that was what was exciting. That's what was fun
for sure.
Being around those people.
Yeah, it's definitely a different environment when you're around people that volunteer to be there, especially when they volunteer to be at something that's considered a tougher assignment than the average person. So it's like there's a different caliber of person, like you said, that really shows up for something like that. Did you finish all 3 phases like in the first go around?
No, I recycled Darby phase.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, we had a couple foreign dudes. However it worked out, I recycled Darby. I couldn't even remember. I know I failed a patrol. I don't remember what it was for, but I recycled Darby phase during best ranger competition. I got stuck at Benning until the BRC was over.
Yeah.
And then I'm straight through after that.
So a lot of my listeners are Marines because it started out as like, a lot of my guests were fire supporters and stuff like that from the Marine Corps. Can you kind of go over, Ranger school itself, the different phases and what you experience and what you can talk about from each phase?
Yeah, man. Yeah, no worries at all. Like all that's like, I think like 99% of Ranger school is like public knowledge, public information. So Ranger School originally started off as like a leadership course for the 75th Ranger Regiment. So if you wanted to be a leader in the 75th, you had to go and graduate from Ranger School. And then they opened it up to combat arms over time, and now it's open to all different MOSs across the military. We actually had a Marine when I was going through. There was Navy cats and Air Force and stuff like that that'll go through from time to time. So it's open across all services because it's a leadership course. It's not really designed to teach you like advanced combat skills. It's all those basic battle drills that we were talking about that you learn and go through. Benning, there's 3. So there is 3 phases. Benning phase, or Darby phase, as it's commonly called, is out in Fort Benning, Georgia, and it focuses on like squad level tactics, squad level small unit tactics, and obviously there's like the first week it was called RAP week. Back in the day, like Ranger Assessment Phase. I forget what the hell it stands for, man. Honestly, off the top of my head, it's been too long to think about it. But yeah, it's like all your testing out. So you got to go through. You got to do a PT test, 5-mile run, pull-ups, obstacle course, land nav, buddy run, ruck march, just all sorts of crap. Like basically a gate week to get you into the actual training. So you have to pass that in order to actually move out and into the field to do that training. And then it's basically a sleep deprivation, starve mission planning, and you're going out and executing missions every single day as a squad. And they rotate you through leadership positions. And in order to achieve a go, you have to not only accomplish your objective, but handle things right. There's always like medevac scenarios that are thrown in, like all sorts of different stuff, in placement of gun teams, ambushes, raids, whatever the case may be. And so you've got to pass a certain number of patrols in order to move on.
Yeah.
And then after you graduate from Darby phase, you move into Mountain phase, which is out in Dahlonega, Georgia. I think I said that right.
Real quick, in Darby phase, what is the thing that most people have most issues with?
After they make it through that first week, it's passing patrols. Or honestly, people end up falling asleep, and you'll get kicked out, or you used to be able to get kicked out for like falling asleep or recycled for it. Lack of motivation. People get LOM all the time and get dropped for that.
Lack of motivation.
Lack of motivation, bro. And
hard.
then also at the end of every phase, there's like a peer review. So you might have passed your patrols, but if you're a shitbag, you know, and you get peered real low, they'll kick you for that, or they'll recycle. You know, people get trench foot all the time. You know, you're just so broke down. People not showing up physically prepared and mentally prepared is really what kind of gets them kicked out. Like their heart's just not in the right place.
I could see the mentally prepared, but it seems like that, you know, the initial week would weed out all the not physically, you know, prepared people.
You know, you would think that, right? Because you have like the standards, in my opinion, are kind of low to get through that first week. You know, a 12-mile ruck in under 3 hours, I think it is. You know, a 12-mile ruck in under 3 hours, which is like infantry standard. Mm-hmm. You know, a 5-mile run in under 40 minutes, 49 perfect push-ups, you know, shit like that. It's not really, you're in peak physical. You don't have to be in peak physical condition to get through those, but definitely over time, I think, you know, your body gets broken down to a point where everybody's on the same level playing field. But for those first couple of weeks, you know, sometimes you see guys that are just getting broke off, that don't know how to self-hydrate, don't know how to prepare themselves, and they're the ones that really just start sucking and slowing everybody down.
Do you think that the military should do a better job, like, you know, explaining nutrition and sports nutrition and stuff like that, for especially for going through like Ranger School, or maybe guys going through ANS or something? You know, these obviously taxing courses. It seems like the military spends a lot of time and money learning more to teach these courses, you know, better, but they don't do anything about like preparing the person to go to it. You know, like getting physically fit. Here's a guide. The Marine Corps did a really good job, I thought, when they first kind of stood up MARSOC and they were looking for applicants for MARSOC. They still have it. Right. There's an app. They have a workout app that you can download, and it gives you a day-by-day what you should be doing, working out to prepare to go to ANS, you know, go to selection. And then I think it also has some, like, you know, nutrition tips on it as well. Do you think that the military could do a better job, though, like, you know, pushing that kind of information out there?
Back in the day, I'd say absolutely. But I know, you know, if MARSOC's got that going on, that's great. I know selection, you know, for Special Forces has like a recommended thing. There's also, I think the nutrition side is like really where they need to touch on, because they're really good at putting out workout programs and telling guys like, you got to be capable of doing X, Y, and Z, and here's how to get there. But they don't touch on like the nutrition side of the house. Like nutrition is absolutely crucial. You know, it's like the fuel that you put in your car. If you put crap fuel in, your car is not going to perform good. And it's the same thing. And so I didn't really understand nutrition. Even growing up in infantry, I didn't understand nutrition. I would stand around and smoke cigarettes every morning and drink a pound of coffee, or like a gallon of coffee, and go on a 10-mile run. But my body wasn't able to recover from it, you know? And then I would go out and I'd eat Dunkin' Donuts or something and be like, oh, I'm a physically fit guy. I can have a donut. I just ran 8 miles. Well, you're not really helping yourself. You know, you're like, no, you broke your body down and you're putting crap into it and it's not able to recover.
For sure.
You know?
So let's move on to the second phase. So let's talk about the second phase of Ranger School. What does that phase focus on, and what are the issues that you personally had, and what issues did you see that your fellow soldiers had?
Yeah, that mountain phase is the, like, Dahlonega mountain phase is absolutely the worst phase in Ranger School, hands down, bar none, in my opinion. It will eat your soul. So these mountains are so dang high that are out there. Some of the biggest issues, honestly, it goes back into that mental mindset. At that point, all your like non-hackers are like weeded out. Your shit bags most of the time are peered out. There's a couple that make it through and then end up getting peered out in that phase. But it's the biggest thing is just how worn down you get in that phase, because you'll spend sometimes, you know, like all your daylight hours just walking straight up a mountainside with a, you know, 60, 70 pound rucksack on, you know, little nutrition. And I remember there was one mountain that we had walked up one day. I wasn't even carrying the gun that day. I wasn't an ammo bearer. I was nothing. I was like a rifleman for this patrol. And I thank God I was, because I remember when we actually got to the top and we cut rucks to pull security to do like a compass check. And we got to the top of the mountain. I remember like I cut my ruck and like laid down and I'm pulling security and I literally pissed myself.
Oh
I
shit.
mean, from the level of physical exertion, that's only happened to me twice in my military career. But that was like one of those days where it was just like, that's how physically exhausted you'll get. Like people pissing themselves is not unheard of,
That's
and it's just kind of,
people that have never worked in the mountains, even though like Georgian mountains obviously aren't really high, like super high enough to the air is like as thin as would be out here out on the West Coast, but that exertion of moving up and down hills and like fingers and valleys, and that is no joke, and you will find out real fast. No one cares how fast you can run. Like people that have worked in the mountains know, cool, you can go run 3 miles in 20 minutes or whatever. Let's put a ruck on your back and let's see if you can do that, because that's what really matters. Like the running is good because it helps your cardio and shit, but rucking is where it's really at. That's something I wish, at least in the Marine Corps, I always wish they would have focused more on that rather than doing a 3 mile run, in my opinion, because it's tough, man. And like like you're talking about, the physical exertion of carrying weight, dead weight, up and down mountains is real, and
dude, it's
I know a lot of guys. I never had the opportunity, but a lot of guys out in the Marine Corps go out to Pickle Meadows. I'm trying to remember the name of the place now. It's the Marine Corps Mountain Warfare Training Center in up by Reno. But it's base camp is 6,000 feet, and you're moving anywhere from 6 to like 10 or 11,000 feet. And sometimes in the snow and shit. And I can't imagine carrying a full combat load plus extra shit that you always have up and down, stuff like that. So I can see that. Did you guys lose a lot of people? Do you lose most of your people in that phase?
No, not from that stuff. Not from like the like pissing yourself type exhaustion, but a lot of people due to that exhaustion can't really, like, they can't think through what they're actually doing and a lot of people would just lose their shit, can't perform, and so they'd end up failing their patrols and recycling there because of that.
Yeah, that's tough. I bet that has got to be the worst news ever when you find out you recycle and you have to start the phase over again.
Yup. Dude, it's so heartbreaking. It is so heartbreaking, especially, and that's like one of the worst ones to recycle because you really don't get any downtime to like recover afterwards. Like they just throw you right back into classes coming in. So you recycle mountains. It's almost like you got to be a tough dude. A lot of people that recycle mountains just drop and move on.
Oh,
They're just
really?
like, nope, I'm done. Yeah, because they don't want to go through it again. And so you'll see a lot of guys that recycle mountains that just throw in the towel because they don't want to go through it again.
So once you finish the mountain phase, you guys move to the swamps, right?
Yeah, then you go down to Florida. You jump into Florida. So you fly, and it's kind of one of those, it's BS because as you're going through these training, scenarios, everybody that's airborne, we got to jump in, and then you're assuming this risk of, snapping an ankle. You got the extra hike out. You're sitting in a harness forever. Like, it kind of sucks. Anybody that's not airborne qualified, that's not doing static line jumps in, they just get kind of like busted and get told to go lay down in the prone for a while.
Yeah.
So it's kind of, it's like a major point of contention. But yeah, so you jump into Florida phase and you go in, do a little bit of train up, and then you hit the field.
That's sick, man. So what kind of training are you guys doing down there?
Same stuff. So every phase you basically get, if I remember correctly, you get reassigned like a new squad, a new platoon, and they just kind of mix things up a little bit. And so then you get some time to go out and practice with those guys and get to know each other and figure out how well you're going to work out.
Once you get into that third phase, do you feel pretty comfortable? Like, okay, I kind of got it by now.
Yeah, but at the same time, you really don't want to screw it up.
Yeah.
Like you get out there and you're like, I really don't want to screw this up. I want to keep you, like, everybody gets to that shit hot because you can almost taste victory, but that one little thing in your, and there's guys that are down there, they've already got like one recycle under the belt like I did. So you're like blade running, you recycle again, you're out. And so you really don't have the chance to make a mistake. You're just in go mode.
Yeah.
So it's a lot more relaxed environment. Once you're in Florida phase, it's a lot more relaxed. Like the RIs, the Ranger instructors aren't riding you nearly as hard, but they're more or less just sitting back and assessing on whether or not you're a turd and you can do your job.
So as somebody that has come out, that has graduated Ranger school, what's your take on the whole Ranger it's back in the news now between like what is a ranger, like what qualifies someone as a ranger. And I think people that are familiar with the Army or the military in general kind of know that usually we reserve the term, he's a ranger to someone that's within the 75th Ranger Regiment. And school
Right.
is, and let's be honest, this is kind of the Army's fault for not distinguishing the two, calling it Ranger School and then telling people you're not a Ranger, or people saying you're not a Ranger even though you graduated Ranger School. So what's your take on this whole thing that's been going on?
I think, me personally, I think it's tit for tat. I mean, if I tell people, I'm like, hey, I graduated Ranger School, I don't go out and advertise myself as a Ranger, because I look at that as like almost like false advertisement. Like, I didn't serve in the 75th. Those guys have a completely different mission set. At the same time, I think it's also on the fault of the Army for not. They really kind of need to get their crap together when it comes to that. Everybody that goes into Ranger Regiment goes through the Ranger Assessment Selection Program. But you've got cooks that'll be like, yes, I was a Ranger. And you've got all these soft skill MOSs that go into it. I got a buddy that flew UAVs in Ranger Regiment. He went through RASP passed, and he flew UAVs.
Yeah.
And he told me he was actually a cop. When I was a police officer, he worked with me. And he was like, yeah, dude, I was a Ranger. And he would just Ranger 24/7. And there was this other infantry guy that was on the police department with me. And he would constantly be flicking the infantry guy crap. And then one day I was like, well, I forget how it came up. But then my infantry buddy was like, he was a pogue, dude. He flew UAVs in Ranger Regiment. Like, I'm tired of hearing his shit. So
yeah.
like it's 6 and 1, half a dozen the other. Like, just be wholehearted and forthcoming with whatever the hell it was you did. Like, there's no shame in it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I've got a buddy as a mechanic that has like two kills underneath his belt. You know what I mean? Like, a lot of the guys, like engineers, for example, like engineers in Iraq and Afghanistan got blown up all the time and they catch shit.
Sure.
MPs, like whatever, like negating somebody because of what they did in the service
that they have
is kind of bullshit.
That they a lot of times don't have any kind of choice over or say over,
Yeah, just be proud of who you are and be proud of what you did. You know what I mean?
I've talked about it on the podcast a few times. I'm like, dude, we've all done more than somebody and less than somebody else. You know what I'm saying? Like, none of us are the coolest guy that's ever walked the earth. None of us are the worst person that's ever walked the earth. Just, appreciate what you got to do, appreciate what they got to do. And there's no reason to downplay someone's service, I will say, if someone steps out of line and talks out of turn about something that they're not really familiar with, then it's like, bro, you weren't even in combat. You're trying to talk like, there's a time and place for that. But to just downgrade someone's service because you're an asshole, well, then you're an asshole.
Yeah, you're a freaking asshole. Yeah, at the end of the day, you're an asshole.
For sure.
Honestly, you really are. Yeah, so my take, to get back to the subject at hand, the military maybe should do a better job, but I think it's just on us as service members to be like, hey, there's a difference. You know what I mean? And if somebody wants to go and parade themselves around as something that they're not, I could honestly care less.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Good on you, bro. But
so after you finish Ranger School, when you get back to your unit, what happens? Like, do they like, hey, we have we have this Ranger qualified dude, or this dude that's been through Ranger training? Are you expected to step up into like a squad leader, platoon sergeant position, or how does that work?
No, I mean, I was already in a leadership role, but like the sergeant major of my battalion was also Ranger. Yeah, like he was a former 75th guy, and obviously like had his Ranger tab. And coming from the 75th, he was like, hey man, like he would basically ride my shit harder than anybody else. Like sergeant major would ride my shit because I was now Ranger qualified. And so, yeah, obviously they expect more out of you, and you are held up a little bit higher than everybody else. And it's kind of like a little inside club, which was kind of cool, I could go to like my brigade or division and people are like, oh, Ranger tab guy, let me help you out, bro.
Yeah, for sure.
And so it's kind of like a little inside club, but at the same time, no, I mean, like your job doesn't change, your role doesn't change. You are given a little bit harder tasks as they come down. But other than that, it's more or less like you become like that mentor at that state for people to aspire and look up to, which is kind of weird.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just wanted the experience.
I had a buddy who was with Recon Battalion that went to Ranger School, and he said, he's like, overall, yeah, it's a kick in the nuts. He's like, I learned some shit. He's like, there's some tactics you may not have thought of that they go through there and they talk about, and he's like, some stuff I've actually applied to overseas work and everything. And I'm like, that's cool, man. As long as you get something from it. I know a lot of people.
Yeah.
It's one of those things, like, guys either really want to do it because they want to, claim the title or say that they finished or graduated the school. And there's guys that want to do it because they know they need it to get promoted. Like the officer side, that's a big thing for them to get a promotion, is to be Ranger qualified, or Ranger school graduate. So yeah, but after you got back to your unit, your Rangers, you finished Ranger school, you've done all this stuff. You've already done one deployment. You went to Iraq with your infantry unit.
Yeah.
Okay, you want to let's back up and talk about that. I thought, and again, for the people listening, this is a live stream. So if you guys want to ask questions, lump them in there, and I'll get to a point where we'll go through some user questions here. And two, we actually got I had another podcast cancel, and you jumped in like last minute. So I'm still learning a lot about you at the same time. So who did you go to Iraq with? What year was it? And what was your role? You were in the infantry, obviously. So what was your role within the infantry unit?
So 09 in the 3rd ID, and I was a squad leader. Okay. I was like I can't remember if I was an E5 squad leader at the time or if I had been promoted to staff sergeant. But
what part of Iraq were you in?
Or maybe northern Iraq.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, I was in Iraq in 09 down in TQ, but it was like I was a mechanic at the time. I had lat moved after 3 years from mechanic to fire support man, a forward observer. So at the time I was a mechanic, just sweating it out in 2009 on TQ, turning wrenches. Probably a different experience of what you guys were doing up in Kirkuk. How was the living conditions there?
So yeah, if we were, so we actually were based out of Fob Warrior. I think that was the name, Fob Warrior. And we had like 2-man containerized living units that were put up at the time. We might have slept like a couple hours a night in there. I mean, we just stayed really freaking busy.
Really? In 09?
Yeah, we stayed busy as hell. Our command really liked to keep us busy. Everything's command.
Were you guys having a lot of engagements with the enemy, or?
No, not really. I mean, there was a couple ticks that happened, but not anything like extravagant. Yeah. Like I experienced later in my career. It was just a couple small skirmishes, so to speak, here and there. A couple IEDs, things like that, but nothing like overly extravagant. It was like that insurgent phase was like, stupid in the shadows to where they're just not so open and about it at that time.
Yeah, 09 was a weird time. It was like things were kind of winding down. Like you said, the insurgency. It was like, hey man, I'm dodging IEDs. Like if you go outside the wire, you're dodging IEDs. Is basically from what I've been told. Again, I sat on TQ the whole time as a pogue, not doing anything.
I mean, you get shot at from time to time. We had green on blues were kind of a big thing back then, and snipers. Like I said, snipers are a huge problem.
Yeah.
Every dude that we had shot was because of a sniper, and it just. I mean, that's really where it was kind of at. You just. Yeah, dude. You just try. You go out, do your job, and you try not to get shot. Like at the end of the day, because like, I think there's only one enemy that we were actually able to capture and hold on to. Other than that, it was just things blowing up. They targeted the Iraqi police, the Iraqi army units quite a bit. So those guys were always getting lit up and blown up, but they really didn't want to poke the hive. We had to give you an idea from like where it was at, we had figured out where all the shitheads in our area were coming from. And we set up this major operation to go out and like take them down. Like we were going to like upload the Bradleys, tanks, everything. And we were just going to go right on this place and just jack it up. And we set this operation up and it made it up to, I forget the name of like the overarching commander in Iraq at the time, but it made it up to there and he shut it down immediately. Because that was supposed to be like the drawdown time. You know what I mean? Like the combat troops were supposed to be out and it was supposed to be advise and assist roles and all that other crap. And to have that going on, having us going out and taking tanks to go ride on these people in armored vehicles, to go like ride on these folks, I think it would have looked really bad politically is the reason I ended up canceling it. But at the same time, we're still going out. At the same time, we were still going out, setting up like small kill teams and stuff, targeting like these indirect fire cells. And so while you have the government saying one thing, saying that combat troops are out and it's an advise and assist role, we still are going out and setting up, small kill teams.
Yeah.
Trying to take IDF
No,
cells.
I know exactly what you're talking about. That was definitely a time because I remember when we were leaving at the time. This is something they obviously don't do now, but in '09, '08, those early days, I don't know if they did it in the Army, but in the Marine Corps, you could deploy with a unit, and while you're overseas, like the last month or two, if you wanted to, you could extend and stay in Iraq stay in Iraq, and the unit that came to replace your unit, you would just fall in with them, and then you would do their deployment as well, and then come home. And a lot of guys did that. A lot of guys jumped on that opportunity. And I remember in '09, we had some guys from my unit that stayed. And right after we left, I think they were in Iraq for another month. And then they all got sent to Afghanistan because it was like the war's ending in Iraq. So I could definitely see it's a tough spot to be in because you guys want to go take offensive action on these people that are attacking you. But the higher command is like trying to look at the big picture and go, look, man, we're trying to pull out of here. So if you do that, you're going to be kicking the hornet's nest, and it's just going to escalate and escalate. So it's that's one of those tough calls. Like you hate on the senior leadership for that, but at the same time,
Sure.
that's a tough decision that they have to make because I'm sure they don't appreciate their dudes being shot at and stuff like that.
Right. And it's weird because you're also trying to play that political game where at the time we're told if we're going outside the wire, we got to take, some Iraqi unit, something like that with us. And so what we would often do to like circumvent that and to get around the politics game is we'd showed up to like a Iraqi police station at like 8 o'clock at night. We wouldn't even tell them.
Yeah.
We'd just show. We'd be like, give us a cop. We'd grab a cop. We'd take his gun. We'd take his cell phone and be like, you're coming with us.
Oh, really?
Wow. And we checked our block, but we could still go accomplish the job because half the time we were taking fire from those guys. I remember watching indirect fire being shot at us, rockets being shot at us one night. And literally being able to pinpoint it to this field right outside this Iraqi police station and being like, that's jacked up, man. Yeah. There was another time when we were on QRF because if we came off patrol and we weren't, we had that downtime, then we were the QRF unit to go out, and we got spun up for indirect fire that had hit the base, and we looked at the point of origin for it. The grid that they gave us actually happened to be from the Iraqi Army compound. Just a wall separated, the U.S. side, the Iraqi side, and we went out in the middle of the soccer field on the Iraqi Army compound, and there's a burn mark from the rocket that they shot at the base. Like, yeah, it's just stupid shit like that, man. Just stupid.
Yeah, it's hard to feel like there's kind of any kind of loyalty there with those dudes because for the people that have never been in the Middle East or any of those. It's all tribal, man. They're loyal to their tribe and their specific sect of the religion that they're part of. Anything else, you can't trust that they're going to be that you could trust them fully on that. At least from my experience. And I hate to paint everyone in a general picture that lives overseas like that, but that's just.
I mean, they weren't all like that. Like I had people. When I was out and about, I remember one time I had a guy like walk up and he was like shaking my hand and crying. Just because he was so happy. And I asked the Turk to come over, and I was like, dude, what the hell's going on? Mm-hmm. And I guess his family had been killed by some insurgents, and he really supported the U.S. and all sorts. I mean, it wasn't always like that, but there was some, I mean, it's
I was an Afghan National Army advisor in 2013 in Sangin, and there were dudes there that were straight up warriors, man, that wanted to fight for their country, that wanted it just to be a safe place, they got it, they understood it. And then there were the other dudes that were just there to collect a paycheck,
right.
They didn't care. They're sitting there picking their feet, smoking weed or whatever, or hanging out with their dude. It's like you could tell it's always a weird situation when you're working with those. And I mean, you were a Green Beret, so you definitely have actual training. I had a little bit of advisor training, which is probably pales in comparison to what you guys do. So let's jump forward then to, unless there's anything from that deployment, anything else you'd like to go over, significant events
not really,
like that.
There's always war stories and stuff, man, but that's just a general overview. You know what I mean? Like there's always dumb stuff that happens, but
yeah, for
that's
sure.
Just an overview of it, man.
Definitely. So now let's jump back forward to after you graduated Ranger School. At what point did you decide, like, hey man, I think I want to go SF?
So I picked up a deployment, and we were actually supporting special operations units over there. My sniper center, we went out and we did that. So I worked with a SEAL team and then also with Green Berets over there. And just seeing the difference in how they operated and what they were doing and all of that, I was like, this is this is where it's at. This is what I want to do. But it's also weird because that was also a really rough tour for us in general. And it had actually gotten me to the point of like no crap. At the end of that tour, I was at the point where I actually had a suicide attempt that failed. Nobody knew about it except for my ex-wife.
Holy crap, man.
Yeah. And I was on the phone with her one day, as I'm fixing to come back home, and I was telling her, I was like, I'm done. I am mentally exhausted. I don't want to do this anymore. I want to get out. And she was like, Matt, we have kids, we have medical insurance, we have bills that need paid. Like, you can't just not have a job. Like, you need to stay in. And she had convinced me to like stay in over the phone. And I was like, well, if I'm going to stay in, I'm going to, I'm going to do this my way. I'm going SF. Like, this is not an option anymore. If you want me to stay in, this is what I'm going to do. She agreed, and that's what I did.
What kind of, so prior to going, you're with the sniper section, you're doing stuff with them. How would you say that the training, well, if you want to talk in depth about your sniper school training before we get into the SF stuff, but I'd like for you to compare like how that training, because sniper training is not easy. I think anybody that's aware of it knows that that's a hard school to get through, Army or Marine Corps. And how did that school kind of prepare you to go through, selection in Green Berets?
So it's weird the way the Army works. Most of the snipers in a sniper section don't even pass sniper school. They'll go in, they try out for the sniper section, they get put on it, they get trained up, and then the unit, your sniper section endorses you and says, all right, you can go to sniper school and pass now. And so when I was in the sniper section, what I ended up doing was going through, getting trained up and everything else, had my sniper school date. And then when it came time for the sniper school date, I actually had the opportunity to go to Ranger school. So I jumped into Ranger school. And as soon as I got back, then I picked up that deployment to go over to Afghanistan. So I hadn't even been through sniper school at that point.
Oh, okay.
I had just had in-unit training at that point. So I didn't even make it to that point.
Gotcha.
That deployment. And I did my sniper training later on in SF, but I didn't get the formalized Army training in infantry at that time. It's kind of weird. Kind of like a catch-22.
That's not necessary. I mean, that's kind of how the Marine Corps is as well. They have what they used to call STAY, the target and acquisition. What is it? Sniper target and acquisition, I believe. Platoon, and that would be a group of school-trained snipers and guys that are in the platoon that are hoping to go to school at some point. But they're all still part of the team. If you haven't gone to school yet, you're the dude that gets to carry the heavy ruck kind of deal. So that's not necessarily uncommon. It sucks though that you never got to go through the school like before that, I guess. I mean, I guess you did it later on, but so
yeah, it sucks because I never got to do the big Army sniper school. But I mean, you only have so much time at home, and that's something I think a lot of people don't understand. When you're rotating, you're on constant rotation between deployments. There's only so much time to do training, and in addition to that, you also want to spend time with your family. So in that year in particular, in between like getting back from Iraq and heading back over to Afghanistan, I spent maybe 2-3 months at home max. And doing that, I'm doing like pre-deployment train up, all my check the block stuff that you got to do and everything else. And the rest of the time I was off doing school stuff. I was off doing development courses, Ranger school, and all that crap. So it was just one of those things that, do you want to go to sniper school or do you want to go to Ranger school?
And the Army is one of those, you guys do these extended deployments from a year plus, which is, I guess I'm grateful that the Marine Corps is only 7 months, unless you're with like a higher command, Yeah. So, all right, so let's talk about assessment, and what were your thoughts going into it? Did you think you were ready? Like, I don't know, kind of guide us with your decision to do that and how you prepared yourself and what you would change. So for the guys that are listening that may be interested in a career in SF.
Yeah, man. So I got home and I just decided like, this is what I'm going to do. I actually only gave myself like a month to 2 months of prep beforehand. Because I always, infantry guy, I always say in like good physical shape, even when I was deployed, living on a tiny camp, I'm still working out. You know what I mean? Like I might not be able to shower for a couple of months, but I can still like put a bar on top of, Bobcat forks and do pull-ups. You can do sprints, there's all sorts of crap that you can do to stay motivated, jump rope,
for sure.
Like whatever, man, like you just try to stay fit. So I got home and I just trained up for like a month to 2 months. The first week I was back, I walked in the SF recruiter's office and I was like, I want to go to selection. Made sure I checked all the blocks off that I was good to go. And he's like, all right, we do train ups and all this other stuff. I was like, honestly, man, I don't care. I will figure it out. I've been doing this. I've been playing this game for a while. I think I can handle it. Like, I'm not coming to your morning PT sessions. Like, I just don't care. And so I would train up every single day. I was doing 2-a-days, eating right, had my meals down. You know, I had figured all that out, and I never ruck more than probably 5 to 6 miles in a single setting, about 50 to 55 pounds, focusing on walking. You know, I'd done my own research that I could pull from different things the guy said. So I'd done my own research and just beat the living hell out of myself prior to going there. It never really did long extended ones. Runs, I never went over like a 6 mile run. Tried to get my run times down on those, keeping like 6 mile at like a 7-minute pace. You know, and just worked out, hit the gym, did my rucks, did all those good little things. And then ultimately just got my mind right. You know, the biggest thing for me was just having the right mindset. Like, when I had made that decision, you know, it's like anything else. You know, my sergeant major at that time was like, is this really what you want to do? Like, you have an awesome career. You've done great things at this point. Like, you could move up. You're going to be an E8 in no time. You could be an E9. You're going to do great things. And I was like, nope, screw that. I want to make an impact, and I don't want to deal with this crap anymore. Like, I'm tired of the infantry crap. I want to do something else.
Are units usually pretty, I don't know, do they normally support the decision for guys that want to go SF and stuff like that? Or is it one of those like, God damn it, you know, like you're now an outcast?
Yeah, that's basically like a lot of the times you get turned into an outcast. You know, especially once you make it back and you pass. Like, you're kind of like the outcast at that point. Like, nobody really gives a shit. If you're in Ranger Regiment and you go to do that, like, they almost look at it like it's like a traitor. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
Like, guys from Ranger Regiment that were going through selection, they're like, bro, man, I gotta pass if I don't make it. And there's dudes that would fail left and right. You know, they're like, oh, my life's gonna suck now.
Yeah,
like,
that's funny.
Yeah. So for me, it was like, there is no plan B. This is what I'm doing. Like, my head's in the right place. I'm going. And that was my motivation. Like, I got tired of being that guy. You know, I got tired of being top fed shit missions to where I'm going out and risking my life, and I get in the lives of my men, and we get like no input in it. I got tired of that.
Sure. That's easy. I mean, I think a lot of people get that feeling. A lot of people take that feeling and use it to get out. You know, that's their reasoning to get out. You're using it to go up to the next level, so you have a little bit more say-so over your life. And for those that don't know, like, anytime you move into these units that work in small teams and stuff like that, it slowly becomes like more big boy rules and like, hey man, you come here and do your job, and as long as you do it, we don't have an issue. It's like one of those like, but if you don't do your job, then there's an issue, and we're gonna have to figure out what the hell's going on. But it's a nice thing to be able to come in and actually have an input and say, you know, as an E6, I had at First Anglico, they gave me a lot of say because of my experience and stuff like that. They let me, you know, make decisions that normally a staff sergeant in the Marine Corps is not going to make on talking about training evolutions or deployment stuff and things like that. So it's definitely the way to go. You know, once do you think having that mindset that you're talking about, this is it, or I'm, you know, there's no plan B, is the right mindset to go into something like that?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Because you get that plan B in your head, because everybody gets broke down to the point where they want to quit. You know, like everybody going through selection and even through the Q course, because it lasts so long, you know, there's a point where you just don't want to do it anymore. You know, where you're like, this just sucks.
Yeah.
You know, like you're in so much physical pain. You know, a lot of guys get injured, a lot of injuries happen, and you know, you have to push through that pain and having that mind frame of, I don't care, you're gonna have to kill me to get me to stop. I mean, if you don't have that mindset, if you don't have that mentality going through it, why are you there?
Tell us about day one. What was day one like?
So unfortunately, I'm not allowed to get that in depth. Yeah, but I mean, it's very. I can talk about some of the general things that go into it. You know, like there's big boy rules definitely come into place. Like, they're not there to. It's not like a ranger school where everybody's just there yelling at you in your face, trying to get you, you know, overstressed. They want to give you a ridiculous task and see how you perform at it. You know, like they want to see how you react. They want to get that mental aspect of it. And at the same time, you know, are you freaking out? Are you doing good things? Are you helping out your buddies? Or, you know, are you keeping a cool head? Are you driving through the pain? Because they've all been in it themselves. So it's weird because, you know, Ranger School, you get immediate feedback if you're screwing up. Immediate feedback.
Probably not the feedback you want either.
No, it's not. No, it's always negative feedback. Like, it's never, hey, good job, Ranger. You've done good things. I remember the one time I actually made a good decision in Ranger School. Well, not one time I made a good decision, but I made a good decision. Yeah, I made it. So yeah, we were actually prepping for an ambush, and my guys were just broke off, and they'd sent out the leaders recon of the ambush site, and I was back in the objective rally point with the majority of the squad, and these dudes are like nodding off. They just look like shit. You know what I mean? And I was just like, all right, our priorities of work are done. I want you guys to drop to 33% security and go to sleep. I want dudes to take naps.
Mm-hmm.
And all the team leaders and stuff were like, is this guy serious? You know, like the people that I pulled in and told like go disseminate that information, they're like, he just told us to go to sleep.
Like sleep's not
And
allowed. We're in Ranger school.
Yeah, right. And what was funny was the RI came up to me. He's like, Ranger, what are you doing? I was like, my guys are broke off. They're going to go on an ambush. They're going to be laying there for a long time. They're extremely tired. We're not doing anything right now. I've got 33% security in place. I know where I'm at. I know where the enemy's at for the most part. I've got a security plan in place. Everything's set up. Priorities work are done. They need to rest.
Mm-hmm.
He was like, all right, man, good to go.
That's legit, dude. Did
And then after,
oh, go ahead.
he was like, oh, but yeah, in selection, you don't get that kind of feedback. You know, if you make that kind of call in selection or you make calls like that, they don't tell you whether or not it's the right thing to do. They'll let you break yourself off the entire time, you know, and then every now and then they'll hold a formation. They'll be like, all right, they'll call off roster numbers and be like, you guys go to this side, you guys go to this side. And then they'll march off the guys that are no longer in.
What a mind
they
fuck,
don't
man.
bad calls.
How many dudes that you felt like you were friends with did you watch get marched away that were no longer part of the program?
None.
No?
None. Actually, it's like none. It's kind of weird because you can, I don't know, I always felt like I had that ability to like read people pretty good. So I surrounded myself with like-minded people when I got there and just kind of stuck with those dudes and made some really good friends while I was at it.
Yeah.
And we just kind of stuck it out together and it just kept trucking along.
I'm sure it's like any military school where you look at the people that are there and you're like, some of these people don't belong here. Like you can just tell, like you're not ready for this, you know, like you.
Dude, absolutely. I had a guy day one that was like a combat medic, I think was his actual role. He was like a combat medic.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember like we were just sitting around in our rucks and we weren't doing anything at this time. And the guy was asking, I was like, well, you know, if you're a medic, you should look at being a Delta. And he's like, what's a Delta? I was like, excuse me?
Oh, really?
I was like, how do you get into this? You know, how do you aspire to be something at this level and absolutely nothing about it? You know, and that guy was gone within like a day or two.
Yeah. And for those that don't know,
You know?
the 18 Delta is that's your medics. You know, that's your special operations medics. They go through really intense. I think they have the longest school, don't they? After you finish. Yeah.
Yeah, they do. They do all they do all the train up with us. You know, like they'll go through selection, they go through, you know, small unit tactics, whatever the case may be, and then when it's time to do the MOS phase, they go off to SOCM.
Yeah.
And they go through, you know, just a ton of other crap. And so your medics that like you run through the course with, you don't even see them when it gets to Robin Sage. You get a whole new slew of medics because they've been in the program forever.
Yeah, it's like 8 extra months of schooling that they're going to go do, you know, and which is cool because they let them work in the hospitals and these like at-risk areas and shit like that so that they get hands-on experience and stuff.
Yeah, they do all sorts of cool shit. I love like but it's almost scary, you know, like they get training down to like dental. You know, like they get dental training, but I would never let a SOCM medic pull my teeth.
No,
you know what I mean?
That's like last, you know, absolutely only if required kind of deal.
Exactly, man.
For sure.
But they're all used to have. I love all the medics, and they're like some of the hardest ones for us to get. You know, like if a team doesn't have a medic, a team can't deploy. And so if you're a medic, you can stay as busy as you want in SF.
Really?
You know, if you're an
it's that hard to come
by.
Yeah.
Huh? Well, it's not. It takes them a long time. They have a high fail rate, and they might, you know, if you fail SOCM, you fail some portion, they tend to take those guys and be like, all right, you failed SOCM, let's try you out as this MOS, and they'll send them through that MOS training instead.
So I'd like to know what for you personally, what was the hardest part of selection for you, and then kind of how you overcame that. But real quick, I want to remind the people that are watching this live, feel free to drop in some questions, especially while we're talking about selection, if you have any questions about it, and then you know, I'll ask them. And then once you finish that, I'd like to, well, let's just start with that. What was the hardest part of selection for you, and how did you kind of overcome that?
So at the very end of it is a road march that's like 25, 26 miles. Mm-hmm. I don't know. It had to have been. I don't know what it was, and they don't tell you how long it is. That's just a guess for me how long our trek was in this particular evolution. And the day before it, I had a major back injury, major back injury. I had like a compression fracture in my spine from carrying a lot of weight, and it didn't really bother me that much. Like I felt the crunch and I knew it was there. I felt the crunch. I knew I just hurt myself. Everybody gets hurt though, and like there's guys that are constantly like spraining ankles, rolling ankles, and they're out there doing all this stuff, and they're still driving on. And so I got a couple hours of rack, and then they wake you up, and everybody knows what this event is. You know what I mean? It's not a secret.
Yeah.
And it's just one of those suck fests that you got to make it through. And I took off walking, and the moment I put my ruck on, I can feel my blades just collapsing on my back. By the time I crossed the finish line on that, I was bent over. At damn near like a 90-degree angle, just kind of barely cooking right along, and as soon as I cut my ruck, I mean, I couldn't move. It hurt to breathe. I couldn't talk. If I tried to talk, like it would just absolute pain. It took me probably like an hour and a half just to walk back to, the place where we were staying at, going through the course after a cut ruck. And I mean, it was just painful. It was a very, very, very painful experience, going through that in order to make it through. You're walking with a ton of weight on your back, and for an unknown distance, and your soul's crushed. But for me, what I kind of looked at, I remember there was a soft skill MOS like dude that was going through, and he knew absolutely nothing about half this crap. Like he knew nothing. And I remember when we were out doing like the STAR course, like the land nav portion, which is brutal within itself. And it was just pissing rain on us the whole time. It was just absolutely miserable. And this guy had like taken his boots off, and the bottom of his feet were like peeling off. Man. He had like, dude, it was just miserable, just absolutely miserable. And guys were like giving this dude shit, basically telling him he ain't gonna make it because he's a soft skill dude. His feet, he was a goofy kid, and they were just giving him shit. And as I was walking along, probably like 8-10 miles into it, I remember this kid just came trotting right past me. And I was like, if that little fucker can do this, like, no, I ain't giving
That's
up.
how I look at a lot of things. You know what I'm saying? That's like, if, someone's already done this before me, like, well, if he can do it, why can't I do it? Kind of deal, And I think it seems like nowadays people don't have that mentality. You know what I'm saying? They'd rather look at like why they can't do stuff. Like, oh, I can't do this because of this. I can't do this because of this, rather than looking like, and for me, and this is kind of a side topic, I guess. It's like when people talk about, well, I can't find a job, or there's no jobs out there, or there's only these jobs. I'm like, dude, you're automatically telling me that everyone out there that's working, or everyone that's getting a job today, because there's people being hired every day in this country, that you are not better than them, or that they are all better than you, and that you don't have the skills or something that they do. It's like that's your self-defeatist attitude is just horrible. So it's like that, like what you're saying right there, like using that as motivation, as like, hey, if this dude can do it, I can do it. That's the way. I like that. That's the way to go. Yeah,
it's like I don't care how broke off, how like I'm not one for a pity party. When it comes to that stuff, and no, it's game time, dude. I'm not gonna let these guys beat me, like period. And I'm gonna at least complete the training, and if they tell me I'm not good enough, then fuck, good for the country.
That was my next point too. Is that you finished that massive ruck, and you still don't even know if you passed. You just know you finished the ruck.
Yeah, I'm just breaking myself off, and then, afterwards they said everybody, like they start calling you in one by one and telling you whether or not you've been selected, and there's a lot of people that walk out of that brokenhearted, but you're just standing there waiting on your buddies like, all right, did you make it? Did you make it? Hey, it's big hug time. And there's other guys that you just see with this look of disappointment because they've been through all that. And they're like, well, I got invited back. Or some guys get invited back. Some guys get never, like NTRs, like you're not coming back, never to return. Wow. Like go home.
That's got to be tough, especially if you finished every phase. You completed the training, but you don't get selected.
Well, there's one thing to be able to nug your way through it. It's another thing to be a piece of shit and work your way through it. If you're not working, is like team week is a huge thing in selection. If you can't work as a team, or you're a crap leader, or you just can't get along with people, you can't pull yourself aside and be a follower at the same time to accomplish a task to get it done. Whether or not you agree with how you're doing it, you're going through physical pain knowing that somebody else's cockamamie idea is not the best way to go about it. And there's people that will just bitch and gripe and complain. But at the end of the day, it's them that are being assessed at that time. You're still being assessed, being told, like whether or not you can follow, or you're going to be a pain in the ass. You're not always going to do everything the right way that you want to do. It's not always going to work out to your benefit. But is the plan going to work? Can you get it done? get after it, like, and I think I've never been part of that crew. So and nobody really knows what the hell that selection criteria is, unless you've been there. And even if I knew, I wouldn't tell you.
Yeah, no,
But
I get it. What kind of anxiety did you have though, waiting outside the door, waiting your turn to go in and find out?
none. I
You just
just,
knew, huh?
dude, I didn't. No, I didn't even know. I just didn't care at that point. I was like, dude, I gave it my all. If it's not good enough, like, I don't know what
Yeah.
is. Like,
I mean, I
yeah,
guess if you could
it's
walk
just
away from an event going, "Hey, man, I tried as best I could," and I mean, that's all you can ask for, right?
exactly, man.
So what
Exactly.
was your? So you were
Yeah.
an engineer sergeant. What you want to explain? What an engineer sergeant in the special forces does, what their role is, and then kind of talk about your training.
Yeah, man. So, the, little known facts about the engineer sergeant, like everybody on a team has like their certain role that they fulfill. Like we talked about the medics, you have engineer sergeants, weapons sergeants, communication sergeants. Everybody is like a Green Beret firsthand, like you're an operator. That's what you do, but then you also have this secondary role, and it's your job to cross train your ODA, your detachment alpha, on those specific roles and make sure everybody's up to par. So everybody can theoretically, if need be able to at least do basic tasks within that role. So engineering, yeah, I mean, you're basically trying to master the basics of construction and explosives, and also targeting. So in order to take something down, you probably need to know how to stand it up.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? To actually understand the finer points of it. So, yeah, engineer sergeants are trained in construction, explosives, demolition, and targeting, amongst 1,000 other things. But the lesser known thing is that we also have that admin role. And our admin role is actually like inventory, accountability, pushing pallets, movement, and everything else. So you're a very, very, like, if you take on that role, you're a very, very busy guy. Like you
So you're
are,
the logistics
you're,
dude too, huh?
yeah, yeah. On top of everything else, you're also like the logistics guy. And, you're kind of like that guy that everybody hates at the end of the day, because nobody likes to get told how to keep track of their crap. But at the same time, you'll get phone calls from, company HQ that's like, hey, bro, new commander just came in and we're going to go inventory your shit today.
Yeah.
And so then you got to go through and yell at everybody like, hey, dude, where's all your shit? Like, oh, no, man, it's in this locker. And then they blow you off and you're like, so you end up developing systems and that whole thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, logistics. If you got a crap engineer, it'll make or break. If you've got a crap engineer, like it directly results in how well you're living. When you're in these austere environments.
That's true. Yeah, because you're in charge of designing and building the living structures and stuff like that, huh?
Yeah, and also getting the supplies that you need. Like you're more or less like the networking guy as well. You're like Morgan Freeman in Shawshank Redemption. Like you're the guy that can get.
For sure.
Like,
Do you are so? What was your favorite part of engineering school then, or that school?
Dude, I fell in love with explosives, man. I absolutely
I figured
love explosives. I love the theory. I love the theory behind it. I love that whole aspect of it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then the best part, is that, once you graduate and you're off to your detachment, if you have some weird cockamamie idea on how to apply explosives, you take your allotment, you go out and you test it and you see how well it works. Yeah. It either sometimes it worked good, sometimes it worked bad. Like I came up with like different breaching charges and stuff like that I used on doors that I absolutely loved. There's other things that I've tried, like explosives on a chain link fence. Like that sucks. Don't ever try that. I mean, but
explosives on a chain link fence.
Yeah,
that's funny.
Yeah. So I mean, like there's tons of different shots that you can do and go test out to see if it works. You can use the military's money to order stuff that you just want to see how explosives react to.
That's
it.
what I was gonna say. You get paid to go blow stuff up. That's awesome.
Oh, yeah, dude. Yeah, absolutely.
How often were you actually going out and doing demo though?
If I was overseas, me personally overseas, like I would do it as much as humanly possible. So I would take every opportunity I could, like, oh, that's a different type of door, or that's a whatever. And you actually do it quite a bit. Like you do a lot of demo, leaving objectives, you want to destroy caches, you want to destroy different things, different equipment, things like that. I actually had on my last trip over to Afghanistan, my team was making fun of me from the amount of motorcycles that had blown up, because, the Taliban cruised around on bikes and they would stash them in places, and you don't want to give them that opportunity for mobility. And so motorcycles and sticking blocks of C4 and just getting rid of them on our way out,
That's funny.
And yeah, no, I don't leave shit for anybody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's talk about you're done with Q course, you're done with your engineering school, your engineer sergeant school, and now you're going to your actual team. What is that
Yeah.
like for a new like SF guy to show up to a team? It's obviously going to be different, I would assume, than you showing up as a boot to your infantry unit.
Yeah, man, that is very intimidating. Like, you're going to a special forces attachment as a new guy with combat experience, whatever, under your belt, but you still end up having to prove yourself
Mm-hmm.
when you get there. So it doesn't matter what your rank is, where you're at. You're the guy that's sweeping the floor, taking out the trash. Just trying to be a sponge and soak up everything, and you've got to earn your voice on that team. You've got a place, but you don't have a voice at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And so, proving your mettle to that team is absolutely huge. And then, you can essentially, just like being voted off the island, you could be kicked off a team at any time. And it doesn't matter what your rank is. If the team sits down, they're like, this guy's a piece of shit. We don't like him. We don't mesh together. You'll have like a little mutiny that forms. They go up and they tell the company sergeant major or whoever, and the next thing you know, that guy's gone. Like he gets buried in a basement somewhere. Maybe they'll try him out on a new team.
I was going to say, what happens to a guy? If they're maybe it's just a conflict of personalities, they'll try a different team. But if they're just overall not good, can they remove them from the unit?
Yeah, you can get your tab revoked and thrown out of the unit. Normally when that happens, like you have to seriously screw something up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You're talking like UCMJ action and stuff like that. But if you're just a shit operator, you'll get buried in a basement somewhere. You'll be running logistics for a battalion or doing PowerPoint, whatever.
One of the headquarters
like,
nerds.
Yeah, that's exactly what will happen. But yeah, every team has its own dynamics that are on it. Like no two teams are even remotely alike. And so if you don't mesh with the team, sometimes, you'll see guys just go to another team.
So when you got to your team, did you guys where were they at within their cycle of deployments? Because obviously you got there, 2011, 12 time frame, something like that?
Some 14.
Okay, so the war in Afghanistan is still raging. It's still going on over there, especially for the special operations community. I imagine you guys were on some kind of cycle. Did you show up like in time to do a lot of training with your team before your first deployment, or was it like right into a deployment?
Yeah, I showed up and I did some training, hung out with the team, got to know the guys a little bit. And then we took off on kind of like, not really a last minute thing. Like there was a deployment that was on the horizon that they're like, hey, this might happen. But it's like a 90-10 probability that you won't go. And then overnight it turned into hey, get your shit together, you're leaving. And so we did a short train up and rolled out on that. And then came back from that trip. And then I did 3 total with them. So I came back from that trip, did another one, and then another one after that. Yeah.
Can you talk about those deployments at all? Like where you were at, what you were doing, or anything?
Yeah, I can talk. Yeah, I'll talk vaguely about. Well, the first one I won't talk about, but the other 2 were rotations over to Afghanistan. Yeah.
Okay. And can you kind of explain the role of Special Operations Force people that were in Afghanistan at the time? Because there was. Everyone knows everyone sees like the Marines that are over there and the Army soldiers, they've seen Restrepo, and we're all kind of like defending our FOBs and doing foot patrols and stuff like that. What are the Special Forces guys that are going over doing?
So our primary job obviously is to, I guess, to take back to big key terms, train, advise, and assist. And more often than not, you're either going out, living in villages. I've done that part of it where you go out and you live in a village and you're, actually working and building up a local national force to go train and fight these violent extremists, or you're on a rotation with commandos, with the Afghan commandos, and taking them out and hitting objectives or some combination thereof at all points in time. So you're very, very, very busy.
For sure.
But mostly training and working with the local nationals in order to get them built up and take them out to make sure they can accomplish what they need to accomplish.
So I was, like I said, in 13, I was there as an advisor, but I was just with obviously the regular ANA guys, and we had some MARSOC guys in the area. So every once in a while you'd see those dudes, and you'd see their Afghans that they'd be working with the Special Operations Afghan guys. And a lot of guys held those dudes into pretty high esteem. Those were like really good Afghan forces that were well trained. What was your take on those guys overall?
I mean, it's just like any other unit, man. You have like good and you
For
have
sure.
bad. Um, they also, they're expected to get treated a certain way. They're top tier guys. They're expected to get treated a certain way. When they're not properly employed, they're always asking us to help them out on that to make sure that they're getting utilized the right way. Unfortunately, I had a trip where our guys were not getting utilized the right way, and they had their morale that was beat down quite a
Mm.
bit. But you can quickly combat that, by just literally mentoring them, because you're with them 24/7, and keeping them motivated to get shit done.
Yeah,
So
for sure. What kind of can you talk about kind of like the weapons that you guys use with the Afghan army guys were using, and what was like the hardest part of training them up on these weapons and tactics that we take it for granted that the United States has been around for over 200 years and we have over 200 years of experience of military and tactics and all this stuff, and people get mad about the Afghan army not understanding thing, and it's like, bro, they've been around for like 5 years. Like, we've worked out all these issues because we're a professional military force, and that's kind of what we're growing them to be. So can you kind of talk about the training that you did, like specific like weapons handling and stuff like that? What was good, what was bad?
no, I can't, man.
Okay, that's cool. But
I'm not going to take that fight with the DoD. I'm not.
I understand. But you know what I'm saying, though. Like,
Yeah,
we expect too much from these guys that don't even have the background. That don't even.
absolutely. Absolutely, man. And like those guys, they really don't, like they're stood up, and there's also a lot of corruption that goes on
For
within,
sure.
that the military force and stuff. And so I think one of the biggest problems that I saw, um, is those different levels of
Yeah.
corruption, uh, that are within there. And I'm not talking about like the overarching like commando units and things like that. I'm talking about, probably one of the most interesting things that I discovered when I was there was that, in America we have SOCOM, and if you fall underneath that SOCOM umbrella, that's where you take your marching orders from. So you know, um, MARSOC, whatever, everybody's falling underneath SOCOM, and that's where those orders come down from. Is where if you're in like the big Army or the big Marines, yours are coming down that pipeline as opposed from the SOCOM pipeline. Over there, it's different. They took their special operations guys and they have them fall underneath regular Army units, and so you've got their you know these regular Army commanders that are attempting to push out these special operations guys, and they don't really understand what they're capable of, and all that other stuff. And it's kind of where it's on us to go over and like politic in that aspect to get them back up. So they do have some things that they've got to figure out on their side of the house. Like they really do have that aspect that they've got to nail down and get that down. I'm not saying that we have it figured out and we know the best way to go about doing it, but they've got their own hiccups they got to
Yeah,
go.
for sure.
I think
Go
as
ahead.
I was gonna say, I think as far as their equipment and stuff that they have, and the weaponry and things like that, like they're set up very, very well
Mm-hmm.
right now. Um, they're set up very good. They've got good firearms, they've got good equipment, and they're getting good results. They're actually going out and actioning targets and getting good results out of it. To the point where I think one of the easiest ways I could relate it to people to look back and say like it's not like the Taliban insurgency is any less than it was. If anything, in my opinion, it's actually a little bit more pronounced. When I was over there in 12, I don't remember seeing villages covered in Taliban
Mm-hmm.
flags versus, my last trip over there, we would go in places, there's freaking Taliban flags everywhere, and they openly display them, and they have the support of the people. Um,
Yeah, it's crazy, man. It's
so
the being over there for people that don't understand it. It's weird. You can get the vibe, of the area, stuff like that. Like
yeah,
I remember going through areas and we would start seeing kites pop up, and we're like, oh shit, they're like
right.
signaling each other, with kites. So we're like, dude, start like get
Yeah.
ready. I was the team JTAC, so I'm like, hey, let's we got any air in the area? We can get because I think we might be getting hit. Or you see villages like pushing
Yeah.
out, all the women and kids and animals
Yeah.
leaving an area. That's the
Yeah, and we've gone to go hit them before, and like just as like we're cruising in, like you'll see like women and children that just go and sit in a field outside the village, like they don't want anything to do
Mhm.
with it. They're clearly not a threat, but you're just like you've got these massive amounts of people that are just moving out and sitting in a field because they know a firefight's about to kick
Yeah.
off. They just go and sit there. At that point, it's like, well, shit, the dude's fucking game on.
Yeah.
Like
It's always a weird feeling though when you start seeing those people leaving the area and you start seeing the kites coming up. You're like, oh shit, man! Like everybody get ready. Like this is
yeah,
about to be, like you said, game on. It's about to be time.
Yeah, there's other times when you catch them by surprise though, and that stuff doesn't happen, and that's when it gets, in my opinion, to be a big shit show. When they weren't expecting it and we weren't expecting it, you just kind
Bump
of
into each other. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. That's what
Patrol routes just kind of intersected a little bit. Were you guys doing
yeah.
more like patrolling and village stabilization kind of stuff, or was like direct action and things?
So I've done the village stabilization part. That's what I did in 12
Mm-hmm.
when I was over. Attached to those guys, so I did the village stabilization part. And that was different. That was definitely a whole different role, and that was, in my opinion, a great idea. That was just being poorly executed, because there was several pillars that had to be met, within that. I'm not going to try to get too in depth, but definitely one of the big things that you're concerned about is making sure that the economies and stuff like that are set up over there. What a lot of people don't know is the reason that you end up getting these insurgents, Taliban fighters, is these villages are so remote and so cut off from the government that they don't have a way of making money. And after the Russians invaded, a lot of people fled south across the border into Pakistan, and they lost kind of all their tribal ways. How they collect food, how they actually survive. All that was lost. And so then when they moved back and crossed the border, they didn't really have a way to survive. Like, they had lost that. Well, in steps the Taliban, who's kind of like the overarching heroes from the whole Russian portion of it. They step in and they provide the sense of government, to where if there's issues, they solve it in their religious way. Somebody stole my goat, so I'm going to go talk to the Taliban, and they're going to say what you have to do to make it better. So they had that judicial portion of it. They had the protection portion of it down, and then they also had like the monetized portion of it down as well, to where you could borrow money from the Taliban to feed your family, and then in return you were either going to be farming crops or anything like that. And then the U.S. government, when we started that war, well, now we're burning all the opium crops. We're getting rid of all the opium because that's how they get a big amount of their funding. We burn down all the crops down. Now these farmers have nothing better to do in order to repay their debt other than to go fight for the Taliban. And so, we end up killing people that are just out trying to repay their debt, whether or not they're planting bombs or they've picked up a gun to go fight us. And we end up killing these people. And now you pissed off an entire family because the whole reason they're doing that is to support their family. And so we had, I guess, a really steep learning curve,
Sure.
When it came to that, trying to figure out that economic aspect. So that was a huge portion of it, being able to get them to step away from what they're used to and being able to get them, supported by their own government. And that was the whole idea behind the village stability operations side of it, protect yourself, the governance portion of it, and being able to feed your families. And unfortunately, there's a lot of corruption in the Afghan government. And so once we'd set those things up and we'd set them up for success and we pull out, now there's no oversight in this area. And the money wouldn't funnel down like it was supposed to. The ammunition didn't funnel down. Well, now these guys got weapons and they're able to go back out and fight some more. Yep. So it was kind of this shit cycle. But I think also a large portion of that, it had a huge success. And there was a lot of success that came out of the village stability operations. There's a huge amount of success that came out of it. But that was also around the same time Obama was coming in office, and he wanted people to retrograde out, and he wanted all that to happen. And so it almost forced people to pull out prematurely before you could actually get the true measure of success of that mindset and that mission frame.
Yeah, for sure. It was, any kind of money, I don't know why the Taliban did not like that the bazaars and shit were running when we were there. Like when the Americans came in, kind of cleared out an area and allowed, like in Sangin, people that knew Sangin before, it was just a war zone. There's no way you could have a shop open up in the bazaar. Like, that's insane. And then while we were there, all the shops were open. The bazaar was one of the sketchiest places to be because there were so many people in there, because it was so packed full of like people, the economy, the economy was working. And I remember at some point during the deployment, I guess one of the shop owners had been accused by the Taliban of working with the Americans. So they drove it's a V-bid, but it was on a motorcycle in front of his shop and blew it up, and it's like, that's the kind of stuff that you're trying to, I don't know, fight against and try to get the local people to see, like, look, man, that's the alternative. You know what I'm saying? So it's obviously better to help us out. And
it's crazy when you go in there to these villages, because you have to convince these people, like, no, I'm not going anywhere. This is different. And if you fall back on that word, that word spreads so fast and you've just lost that entire area.
What do you think about the idea of, in a situation like that, having, let's say, like a SF team the same team go on the same village every deployment, but it's like maybe it's a rotation of like 2 teams that go back and forth. That way, it's the same people because you know as well as I do. We've been at war. You know, we were at war for what 19 years, but it was like 19 different wars because there was no. Every battalion commander that came in thought that he was going to come in and win the fight in his area, and he had his way of doing it. So it's like every time a new person came in, and for the Marine Corps, it's every 7 months, shit was just changing. And it's like I can see why the local Afghans would be like, dude, you guys change shit every few months. So what do you?
Yeah, change shit. Yeah, I mean, it would work in theory, because you always have like that little bit of continuity. And what was nice about going over there so many times is you end up seeing like some of the same faces, and you've got that rapport that's already built up. Sure. And so you've got that respect, and you're already over that first big hurdle to be able to go out and do some of that stuff. But at the end of the day, I mean, you're going to burn dudes out doing that. Like you end up burning guys out because this, like not every place is the same. You can be in one place in Afghanistan and not hear a single round or a single IED go off your entire rotation. Versus another place, you got guys that are constantly taking contact 24/7, and those are the places that you want to concentrate on. But you also want to get those guys that combat experience. You don't want to have guys that do 3 rotations in a boring place, just get demoralized at force and everything else. And if you keep sending those same teams back in the same shithole areas, those guys are going to end up getting burnt out over time.
It's funny how you say sending, and I know what you're saying, but I think average people probably don't. But how sending someone to like a safe area is demoralizing. It's because like they want to get into the fight and stuff.
Right. Yeah. Like nobody wants to go over there and poop in a bag and not see combat. Like nobody wants to. Like nobody wants to do that. Like you want to get some reward. It's like the big elephant that everybody wants to go see when they join the military. And then once they get a taste of it, they either love it or they hate it. Some guys get burnt out. Some guys think they love it and then they get burnt out, on it afterwards. And a lot of issues can arise from that. So
the glamour goes away so fast.
Oh yeah, it goes away. Yeah, it goes away real quick. It goes away real quick.
I remember.
And being one of those senior guys, like being one of the younger guys, I didn't really understand it. And then eventually I got to be where I'm like the most combat experienced guy on the team, and actually sitting back from that role, and you see these like new captains rotate in, or you see like new guys rotate in, and they want nothing more than to go get after it. And in the back of your mind, you're weighing, all right, well, I really don't want you to get shot today. I really don't want, like, is the juice really worth the squeeze on this particular objective? Like you've got to weigh those things out. And that's something that I think the younger guys don't really notice or think about. Like war is a very real thing. Once one of your friends gets killed or shot or blown up, or you don't know whether he's dead or alive, he's lost limbs, they've cracked his chest open and they're like squeezing his heart, trying to keep him alive. Like that shit is very fucking real. And people get caught up in no, I just want to go out and get in a firefight. Well, that's not how it works. I mean, you could quickly be pinned behind a rock and be black on ammo. You could have, in the case of like one of my buddies, like pinned down by a sniper and you're down to like a mag, you bound across a valley and now you're stuck down underneath a little cut bank and you got Taliban running down on you. Like there's all sorts of shit that goes wrong very, very fast. And there is absolutely no way of knowing how it's going to go. And you're sitting behind like a computer planning out your operation. You think we're America, we've got this, these guys are like shit, but I'll tell you, like the Taliban is some of the toughest fighters like on the planet. And there's a reason they're still around. I did a portion of my time going out and fighting ISIS and took my team out on fights, like going out and schwacking ISIS. And those guys couldn't fight for shit. We killed those dudes in droves. And then we went from that to going and fighting the Taliban. And I'm like, hey, these guys are a different ballgame. It's just
Were you fighting ISIS in Afghanistan or over in like Iraq, Syria?
In Afghanistan. So I was actually I went in and replaced the team that dropped the Moab.
Oh, okay. That was a crazy video.
I've actually walked right through that Moab site, and took care of those guys and moved.
That's pretty wild, man. So interesting that you say that the ISIS guys over there weren't as good of fighters. Were they different people? Because a lot of people just say that they're just rebranded. They're just like, hey, I'm taking off my Taliban shirt and putting on my ISIS shirt today.
No, the Taliban and ISIS actually hate each other.
Yeah.
They absolutely hate each other. They absolutely hate each other. And ISIS is like a whole new extreme. Sure. They come and declare martial law. They'd taken their people and would have them. I don't know how depth I can get into this, so I'm going to speak very in generalities, but they did some very gnarly shit to the local population if they didn't um, if they didn't kind of obey and do everything that ISIS wanted. Like they're bad people, and I didn't lose a wink over schwacking as many of them as I possibly
Yeah,
could.
I think the atrocities of ISIS is a. I mean, I remember I think the first time I saw one of the ISIS videos was overseas. I was overseas. It might have been the one where they burned the dude in the cage alive, but it's like, dude, seeing that stuff, you're just like, Jesus Christ, man. Like these dudes, there's something going on with these dudes.
Yeah, they're no joke, man. Like their their ability to be assholes behind a mask, once they've taken over a place and the things that they do, that's where they get their big tough guy reputation from. But a lot of their fighters are very junior and they suck at life.
It's funny how you say they were,
And
you know, how they hate each other and they're fighting each other. When we were there in 13, we were working in an area and there were Taliban fighters coming over from like Pakistan or wherever. They were getting, you know, new fighters coming into the area. And the locals didn't like them because they were just coming in and being like, we're here from, you know, Pakistan. We're taking over your compound. Like, you have to let us live here. What kind of deal? And they were actually getting into firefights with the locals. Like the local fighters were now fighting these higher up, I guess, if you want to call them that, Taliban dudes that are coming over from Pakistan. So it was really an interesting thing for us to see that, you know, like see this inner fighting. And you're just, that's kind of when you realize you're like, dude, this is way more, this whole, what the mess over here is way more in depth than anything that we're going to be able to fix.
if it's one thing I learned is that those people really at the end, like they're just tired and they want to live in peace, just like anybody else. You know, like they really do. They just want to live in peace. And anytime somebody comes in to destroy that, like they want nothing to do with it. You know, like they might not agree with everything the Taliban's doing, but they know due to our reputation that we're not going to be there forever. And the Taliban is just going to come right back. No matter how many of them we kill, they're just going to come right back in, or we're going to breed more and they're going to be back to it. But in the meantime, you know, their sons, daughters, yeah, everybody else is getting killed. And they just kind of, it's not so much that they approve of the Taliban, but if they're there and we're not, then it's peaceful.
Yeah. No, I know what you're saying. So I've got a couple questions. I want to start with the newest question because it's about what we're kind of about what we're talking about. He asked, "Is the Moab worth the squeeze? Is it worth having such a big bomb?" That's LR on YouTube.
That's big. Yeah, it's a big bomb, man. Yeah, it's worth the squeeze. You got 22,000 pounds of conventional explosives detonated overhead.
Yeah. I mean, and that was they targeted a training camp for that attack, right? Isn't that what that was?
I don't know what they put out, and I'm not going to speak of what I know why that happened.
That's cool.
Yeah, I honestly, I haven't looked into the media aspect of it and what the military put out as to why it was dropped. But yeah, it did some good.
It did have an impact, and I think the IO campaign coming off of, the information operations, that the head game that had to have given people that witnessed it or heard about it, on the Taliban side, it was probably really, or ISIS side, probably really fucked with their own, their thinking.
That was pretty. I guarantee you, it was eye opening for them. It really was. And it didn't negate their fighting. Like they're willing to fight for what they believe in and die for what they believe in. So, no matter how big of a bomb you drop, all you're doing is killing people and getting rid of that one problem area. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, how do you defeat somebody that's willing to die for what they're fighting for? Yeah. Like, you have to kill them. And so when people have that deep held of a belief, it doesn't matter if you drop a nuke on them, they're still going to stay and fight. So you either kill them or that's it. Like that's options. You're not really demoralizing them so much. I mean, they're ready to die. So
yeah. And it's like, I don't know. They're so willing, it's not even like they're locals willing to fight for their block. These are people that are traveling to go fight. Like we get a lot of shit in the United States about sending our forces over there and people saying that it's basically a proving ground for our military forces in some ways. But it's like, hey, dude, these fighters or these guys are also traveling. Like this isn't, No,
they're coming from all over. Like they're coming in from all over, and some of the stuff.
Jihad is real. This is the jihad.
That's exactly what it is. Yeah, I mean, like when you have people that are fighting for their religion, I mean that's a much higher belief. That is down to like their root and their soul. They believe that they're out there fighting evil, and if they don't do it, then they've been called to arms, and if they don't do it, then they're not a true Muslim, and they're going to hell. They're not getting any of their glory. They're not getting anything what they're supposed to get in the afterlife. So they're fighting for their religion, and they don't care if they die because in their mind they're going to a glorious place afterwards.
Yeah.
If anything, they want to die. So.
So we had another question from Callum Garrett. He said, do the Rangers have their own JTACs or they just have attachments? And obviously you weren't a Ranger, you were with Special Forces, Green Berets. Do you guys all get Air Force JTACs, CCTs, that kind of combination, or how does that work? Or do you guys yourself go to TACP school, JTAC school?
Yeah, exactly. So it depends, like we'll send a lot of the times, we will send guys to go to that course to get qualified. And if they get qualified, that's great. Then we don't have to bring in another outsider. So that's always kind of like the first thing that you want, because logistically, you don't want another mouth to feed. I don't want to have to feed a freaking JTAC, that just got tasked me from the Air Force, because it's another mouth to feed. It's another thing. So if we can take care of that on our own, then we will. But if we don't have one, then yeah, of course, like we'll outsource them to get attached to our team. We live with them and, do everything to incorporate them into the team.
Yeah. So do you think, you say you'd rather have it within the team, organic to the team, having been a JTAC, don't you think that's kind of a really large task for one person to take on in addition to all the other tasks that you're asked to do as a SF team? Wouldn't you prefer to have an enabler, as long as they're carrying their own weight, obviously?
Me personally, no.
No?
Because because they're an unproven asset at that point.
Yeah.
Like you want to make sure that they're a solid guy, and you don't, or gal, and you don't really know what you're getting. And at the same time, like, you built this trust up on your team, and you want to make sure that whoever's on your team, the JTAC's going to be privy to a lot of the team dynamics and everything that's going on. You want them to be able to fit in as well. And you don't want to have to expose your secrets to somebody that you don't really know.
Yeah, no, I understand that.
So that's the reason I say that. Not that, and ideally, yeah, absolutely. I would like to have somebody else out there that I don't have to worry about shit, and I can keep operators doing operator things. But at the end of the day,
you'll step up if you have to.
Yeah, exactly.
So when you guys are getting ready for a deployment, obviously this will vary depending on your one deployment was a last minute kind of shoot out the door, whereas your other ones were more planned. Do you guys have your attachments show up early to train up with the team so that they're fully integrated, or do you pick them up down range as like part of a rotation?
No, we integrate them.
And
they're fully integrated.
What's your expectation for these attachments? Like, what do you like to see in an attachment that comes to you, and what do you not like to see? Like, give me some like examples of bad things that you've seen that'll, make an attachment's life worse than it needs to be.
Oh God. Yeah. So, you just want people to, just like any guy that shows up to a team, you want them to show up like humble and actually be competent in their job. I can deal with not getting along with you personally as a man. Like you and me, like we can disagree on everything and still work together great. And I had that dynamic at one point in time to where me and this other dude are just like, it blows, but both of us are really good at our job and we respect each other for that, because that's what really matters, whether or not I can trust you out there. And having people show up that don't know what the hell they're doing, and are like, I'm here for a reason. Like, well, kind of, like if you don't know your job, then you're not really here for any reason. Now you're a liability and you're going to get treated as such. So expectations is just show up and know what the hell you're doing, know what you're there for and be able to perform that task. One of our infantry uplift platoons that we had at one point in time, I had it out with their platoon sergeant because I needed a gun team for a specific mission, and we're already out doing things, and we have a follow-on mission for the next day. And I told him, I was like, yeah, I need a freaking gun team. I need a 240 team, like gunner, AG, AB, and they need to carry at least 800 rounds of ammunition. That gun shoots 600 to 800 rounds a minute.
Yeah.
And so depending on the gas setting, so if, you're holding down the trigger, you've got like 1 minute of trigger time. Realistically, you've got 1 minute of trigger time with that machine. And so, yes, I want at least 800 rounds on that. And the AB carrying another load of 800, with that gun up on this hillside, because we're going to be out and cut off. So, yeah, I want a fucking gun team. And this guy started giving me shit. And he's like, oh, it's a big mountain. That's a lot of weight, and these guys are not SF guys. And I was like, they're fucking infantrymen, dude. And I've been in the infantry before. And I'm telling you right now that gun team will have a minimum combat load times 2. There's 3 guys. They're carrying a gun. One's carrying nothing but fucking ammo. That gun team needs to have it. If you can't provide it, I'm going to find somebody that fucking will. And you're out of here like tomorrow. So give me a fucking gun team. Like that type of shit. Like that'll piss you off real quick. Like that is your job. That is your role.
For sure.
You're there. Like, no, you're giving me a gun team, and I don't care how hard it is on them. We'll take the movements as slow or as fast as we need to be. But up there, I can't get an ammo resupply,
Yeah.
like, and that shit's what keeps you alive. So yeah, provide that support. So ultimately it's just knowing your role and being able and capable of fulfilling that role. And and that's not even asking for anything. That's asking for a baseline infantry job. Like, I want you to do the job of an infantryman.
Mm-hmm. No,
And
no,
if you're
I see what you're saying, man. It's like, I think anybody that's been outside of that realm or is not familiar with it, they don't. It's hard for them to understand. It's like when you show up to a unit like that, or when you go on a deployment like that, you're like one of one. You know what I'm saying? There's no backup plan. You can't fall on someone else to pick up your slack. Me going out as an advisor at JTAC for an advisor team, there was no air section. Normally in the Marine Corps with the infantry battalion, you have multiple you have an air officer, you have multiple pilot JTACs, FACs, and then you have multiple enlisted JTACs. Then you all kind of feed off each other, learn from each other. And I didn't have that, as a advisor team guy. It's like, dude, you have to know how to program your own radios. You have to know how to request air. You have to know. It's not. There's no. Oh, maybe he knows it. You have to. It's like, and when you're,
do you know it or you
for
don't?
sure, and
Yeah.
over there, it's real. It's like, this isn't training anymore. Like, if you fuck up, this is like, there's real life consequences that can end in you or your friends getting killed, or people that should have gotten killed get killed. It's like, there's real life consequences to this. So
It's a snowball effect. You know what I mean? Like, one little mistake like that leads to another thing. We run out of ammo and now we're freaking pinned down. Now we got to send in some other people to resupply for us, or we got to exfil underneath it, or now we need additional air support just to cover our ass, or now we got to get a mortar team spun up. Now we got to get QRF because we got fucking overran. Like, there's issues and consequences, and now we're no longer on the mission at hand that we're trying to accomplish. Now we're on a recovery operation. Like, all those things, all because somebody didn't want to hump an extra 800 rounds. I don't give a
it's
shit.
funny, the dude pushing back, giving you fucking pushback, is probably the first guy to brag about how he got to work with the Special Forces team overseas. He uses that on his like own little personal resume of like cool stuff he got to do.
Yeah, I don't give a shit at the end of the day. Like, there's lots of those guys that were like actual pipe hitters that we'd take, and we'd be like, nah, y'all are like, we want this guy, we want this guy, we want this guy. You know what I mean? And there's other ones like that where I'm like, I don't even want you to fucking burn shit. You know what I mean? Like, I would rather you be gone.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, it happens, man.
And
it happens. It's your life that's on the line. So why would you have to be like that? Like, that's how people have to look at it. There's no time for PC bullshit or Mr. Nice Guy. Like, lives are on the line for real, so you have to step up and do your job.
Yeah. And I was fortunate enough to be in that enabler role for an ODA, on that sniper team. Was fortunate enough to be able to be in that role. And like, yeah, if you ask me for stuff, you ask me for advice, you want me to do something, I'm going to fucking do it. I might ask you why we're doing things, or maybe suggest ways I think it's better. But at the end of the day, I'm going to get it done.
Yeah.
I never once stood back and said, I can't carry that much ammo. There was one point where I was humping, and this is what really pissed me off. I was humping a Mark 48, which is basically the chopped down version of a 240 Bravo, the size of a Salt 249. I was humping the Mark 48 on an ambush with an ODA, carrying 800 rounds of ammo all by myself. So not only am I carrying the gun, but I'm also humping 800 rounds plus my combat equipment. Like,
that's a lot of ammo. For people that don't know what 800 rounds, that's a lot, man.
I don't give it. And it wasn't like I had a special bag. I actually took it in my regular Army issued assault pack and took cardboard and lined it out so that I could actually feed the belts out on the ambush. And so there is no excuse. Like, you get the damn job done. If you're going to show up to a team, like, be competent, be capable, and get it done.
For sure. So being the engineer sergeant, I assume, and being an explosives guy, I assume that you dealt with IEDs a lot. You know what I'm saying? I imagine you guys didn't wait on an EOD guy to come out and neutralize an IED. You just take care of that stuff yourself.
So yes and no. We did have EOD guys attached to us, but they weren't always there, or maybe they were doing something else because we encountered quite a few. And so yeah, I've dealt with them. Yeah.
What was your? I mean, can you talk about that at all? Like, maybe some of the IEDs that you encountered, and some of the ways that you guys mitigate the risk from them.
No, I will not talk about that.
Okay.
For two reasons. I'll tell you why.
Makes sense.
Especially when it comes down to TTPs. Like, one, I don't want to put out, because this is the internet. God only knows what the enemy's listening to. So I don't want to put out what we know about the enemy operations and how they're going about it. And I definitely don't want to put out how we defeat those specific TTPs the enemy uses. I mean, that's just, I
get it, man. I get it. Some guys, I have some people talk. a lot of people know about like pressure plate IEDs and stuff like that, and that's, you know, we've had guys come on and discuss, not like in detail. And I know what you're saying about like composition of explosives and shit like that.
There's been times like, I mean, I could just talk about IEDs. You know, there's been times where like we've by mistake dug up pressure plates where, you know, we've encountered different IED making materials and different ways that to go. They're kind of like slowly switching things up on us, adding different switches and things like that. And it's a very real and real world threat, even today's service members. And that's why
yeah, it's a changing threat too, man. It's one of those things. It's like in 2003, if you would have said IED, people would have been like, what does that mean? But, you know, in like 2021, It's like a common term that even a lot of civilians know. You know, they understand like, oh, IED, like, okay, a bomb, a roadside bomb. Yeah, okay, I get that.
A bomb. Yeah, like I have embedded in places before to where, like, you know, we were living there for months at a time. And the first day that we pulled in there, we had like these old Russian mines that they had, like old Russian, like toe popper mines, like about yay big little black guys, the soft spot, and then whatever. Anyways, and we had dug up probably like 3 of those day one, and then like 2 months into it, we end up, you know, we're walking around, we're driving trucks over this place, we've embedded, like we've got everything set up. You know, our dog handler's out there throwing a little ball around. You know, we're exercising his dog for the day, and the dog just alerted on this one part of the ground in the middle of our camp. Another freaking mine. You know, and then going out, the same thing. I was doing some work on a bobcat, and I dug one up.
Oh man.
There was another place that we were at that had a bomb dropped on it that we had moved into, and there was a staircase that went up to the roof, and then you know, that staircase was like bombed out, so it was like rubble and shit like that. We're climbing up and over it, and there was a rigged IED that, you know, was ready to go out. I don't know why anyone would rig pressure plate and have that prep beforehand. That's something I would personally want to do on the objective, you know, if I was the enemy. But they had it rigged and set up underneath there when the bomb hit it. And so as we're digging the stairwell out to actually put in something more functional than climbing over rubble, there's a pressure plate with a fucking IED, you know, like in the place that you've been living and staying and walking and climbing over for the last couple months. So, I mean, like that shit is ever real and present danger there.
Oh, for sure. That's a mind fuck too, because you're like, you can never feel safe because you're finding stuff that you thought was already cleared. You know, you thought the area was clear. We would go to some of these Afghan patrol bases that they had compounds they had taken over and stuff like that. And we would go into some of them. They'd be like, hey, don't go over into this area, or don't walk over there. It's like all IEDs. Like they know that the building and the walls and shit still are IEDs that just haven't gone off yet.
Right.
But it's their patrol base now. They just don't fuck with them. They're like, just don't go over on that side of the building. You'll be okay. I'm like, dude, how are you guys living out here? That's crazy.
Yeah. And something else I found that like, the Afghans will go and they'll actually pull some of the shit out of the ground and they'll have it. And dude, and they will booby trap their own places to keep people out of it. They'll just, so you might not even be dealing with an insurgency type deal. It's just like a home security system. They'll use them as like that's a perfect analogy. They'll use them as like home security systems. And so
that's what we used to call an Afghan solution to an Afghan problem.
Yeah, dude, it's freaking ridiculous. Like these people are nuts, but that's the world they've grown up in, though. You know what I mean? Like that's their environment. Like,
yeah, I try to tell people what it's like to be in Afghanistan. You know, I've never been to Kabul or in the city or anything. I've only ever been in Helmand Province, which is, you know, like going to Iowa. It's all country and stuff like that. But it's hard to like explain what a society that is agrarian in nature and, you know, very tribal in nature, and it's like they're 100 years behind us, you know, on everything except they have cell phones. You know what I'm saying? They live in mud huts, they sleep outside, they make bread over a fire, but they have a data plan on their cell phone. You know, it's
right.
Like,
and Kabul is a major shit show. Like I spent some time in Kabul, and like that place is a major shit show downtown. Like I think it's like 70 or 80. Have you looked at like the heroin epidemic that's going on in Kabul?
Really? I mean, I'm not surprised,
dude. It's insane. Like 70 or 80% of the population that's out there is like hooked on heroin. And so like there is just drug addicts just scattered across the streets. Yeah, dude, it is just insane. It's like a whole nother world. And then everybody else that's not hooked on it is out there hustling. And so the streets are constantly crowded. There's people freaking everywhere. And so you've got these zombie heroin addicts that are passed out, you know, and that are just off doing things. And the city's hustling and bustling. You got these massive markets. It's just this weird world.
For sure.
Weird.
Yeah, it's like, how do you explain that to an American that grew up in the suburbs? You know what I'm saying? Like, It's I don't I'm a pretty laid back guy, and I think some of it's because of all the shitty stuff I've seen overseas. You know, the sadness, the level of poverty, people actually starving, like going to Djibouti, and I'm sure you've been through there, gone to Djibouti and seeing
Yeah.
the refugee camp out there, that big ass UN refugee camp from all the Somalians. You know,
Miles and miles of nothing but like tin and tarps that people like live underneath. Just miles and miles of tin and tarps that people live
corrugated
underneath.
tin buildings in a place that's like the hottest place in the world. You know,
And then they chew cotton. And then they're out there just like every day, like you got cot hour in that place where people are just munching on cotton, getting high as a kite. Yeah, that place is
they're
wild,
trying to
man.
they're out there trying to trade stuff with our dudes. You know, trying to get like sunglasses or get smokes and stuff. It's but seeing like shit like that, and then coming back to the U.S., it's like, man, we have it really good. You know, it's like I wish more people could have that perspective, that worldview perspective of what real poverty looks like, or what real like oppression looks like. But
It's so true, man. I remember I went back home. I got back from like one trip and I came back home and I was like, I'm from Oregon. I flew back in. My brother picked me up from the airport. We were all meeting up for pizza at this place. And as like I'm riding my brother's truck and we're going through, I was like, wow, this place is beautiful. This is so nice. He's like, serious? This place is a shithole. And I was like, just shut up. I was like, no, dude, it's really beautiful. Like this is awesome.
like
I
you
love
haven't
this.
seen a shithole,
This is
man.
great.
I'll show you one though. That's
Yeah, let me show you some
that
pictures,
refugee
man.
camp outside of out in Djibouti is probably one of the worst things I've ever seen in my life, though. Like the sadness of that area
Extreme.
is it's just out of control. You know, it's crazy.
If I lived there, I would just walk until I couldn't walk anymore. I don't care if I would rot in the desert. Like I would just go. Like that is so sad. Like the way those people live is so sad. And then they have that because it's Camp Lemonnier is that camp that we're talking
Yeah.
about, right? If I remember right. Remember that big camp. And then they have this huge, like, like probably 20-star hotel that's like right down
downtown DJ.
Yeah, dude, this huge like 20-star hotel. And then probably one of the craziest things I saw was so I went to the Desert Survival School at like the French run out
cool.
there, whatever the hell that.
Out on Arta Beach.
So I ran through that. That sucked. That was miserable. And they just screw with you because you're American, But afterwards, I was hanging out with the Legionnaires, and they were like, "Hey, man, if you guys want to come over and drink, come over and like have some drinks, man."
Did you?
And so
go ahead.
So we went over there to drink, and we're hanging out in like this French camp, like drinking with these Legionnaires and having a blast. And I like pulled out a pack of cigarettes, and I'm like smoking a Camel. And this random Legionnaire like walks up to me in perfect English, and he's like, "Hey, bro, are those Camels?" I'm like, "Yeah, man, they're Camels." He's like, "Where'd you get them?" I was like, "The base. There's an American base." Like, "Are you American? Like, where the fuck did you come from, bro?" He's like, "I'm from Cali."
Oh, really?
I was like, "Damn, bro, you joined the Legion?" He's like, "Yeah." I was like, "What'd you fucking kill somebody?" He's like, "Yeah."
Holy shit.
I was like, "All right." Had to blow dodge, man. This random dude, but it was
crazy.
funny because then they like let all these like Djiboutian prostitutes onto their camp. And so like you're hanging there trying to drink with your boys, and they've got like these local whores that I'm sure are just pumped with AIDS. They're like trying to hang off of you to like, for whatever reason. You know what I mean? Like, no, just take one back to the truck, bro. It's cool. Like, no, it's not cool.
Yeah, you saying that just reminded me of like Lord of War, where he's like banging that prostitute, and he's like, I don't know if she has AIDS or not, or something. Like, there's no way I would ever bang some chick over there. No way.
No, dude, and the crazy thing is, like, those women were absolutely gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous. But yeah, I guarantee you they were like chock full of disease.
That's unsanitary. Did you get to swim with the whale sharks right there next to their little base on the beach?
I actually went on a dive when I was over there. Yeah, I went on a dive, and that was pretty cool. There were some
fun. Europeans that were out there vacationing, like that came down to dive that area. I was like, oh, people come out here, like we're out here doing military training and whatever. You guys are out here just to go diving. Cool.
Yeah, but they're out there diving and having fun. Yeah, hanging out at the hotels. Like, so you have like this extremely poor economy, and then you have Europeans that are coming over there to like vacation.
Yeah, I mean that's how it is, right? That's how it is around the world. We find a place to go vacation. Everyone made Bali, like the place to go. That used to be a poor economy. I think it's become so famous now. People are shifting to other third world countries, to cheap travel and fun times. I don't know if Djibouti's the place I'd want to go though.
Hell no. And you've got like, I mean, I didn't even, after I learned like how people actually live, like they don't crap in their own house. They walk across the street and they crap in the water. and like it just washes it up on the shore and pulls it back out. So you got all this fecal matter floating through the ocean and through the rivers and all that other crap that's over there. And yeah, no, man, it's just a filthy place.
It's just it's that agrarian society kind of like third world African country, in that case, like again, it just makes me appreciate, everything that I've got here and the ability to like turn my lights on, go flush a toilet, stuff like that, like these simple things.
Right, dude. Yeah, no, and like living some of the ways that you do in the military, like it makes you appreciate everything so much more, so much more.
Yeah, it's
Like,
like you want people to understand that and to have an idea of what you're talking about, but at the same time, you don't want them to be exposed to that kind of, sad reality that some people in this world are living.
well, one of my favorite things, I think one of my favorite things to drink is ice water, like out of a glass.
Yeah.
Like I love me a glass of ice water because I've drinking so many hot plastic water bottles that just taste of plastic because they baked in the sun for so
They're all
long. You just,
swollen and shit.
oh God,
Those
man,
one
yeah, just
liter bottles or 2 liter bottles, those giant bottles they'd give you. Yeah.
yeah.
That
And so for me, like one of my favorite things to drink is just like a glass of ice water. Like I just love it.
I
I
bet.
love it.
So we'll probably start wrapping this up here in just a minute. I've been trying to keep them around 2 hours. So for my listener, or excuse me, for the people that are watching the live stream, if you guys got any questions for them involving the Army, Special Forces, stuff like that, go ahead and put those in now because we'll be cutting off. Is there any kind of organizations that you're trying to represent, support, you want to throw out there, or is there anything else you want to cover before we jump off for today?
Yeah, one of the big things I like to talk about, one organization I'll just throw out there right up front is the Green Beret Foundation. They do awesome things for operators and like fallen in like recovery and everything else. So if
Mm-hmm.
you don't know about the Green Beret Foundation, go look that up and donate to them if you have the ability to. The other thing that I'd like to touch on is mental illness because it's something that like nobody in the military for whatever reason wants to talk about. It's kind of like that black sheep. I actually just had a friend kill himself on Sunday. And it's one of the things, the reasons I like to go on podcasts and speak about. Just because you may have been through an event that is less than anything that we've talked about today doesn't negate how that makes you feel inside or anything like that. And even if you've been through something that's like traumatizing or that's just absolutely, horrible that sticks out in your mind, and you think that you're coping okay with it, like my buddy, I'm sure thought he was coping okay with everything until Sunday, and those demons just got on his shoulders, and now he's no longer around. If you've been through anything like that, like it's no shame in the game. Like go seek out help. If you're in the military, go seek out help. The time that I was in, I was seeing counselors all the time, going out and seeking out therapy. You're not going to get kicked out. They want to keep you in the fight. There's nothing to be ashamed of. There's nothing, whatever experience it may be that you're having issues with, go and get help for that. It's absolutely huge, and it's sad. I hate. I've had 3 friends commit suicide over the last year for my time in service, and it's just unacceptable.
Yeah.
Totally unacceptable. And it's on us as veterans. It's on us as a community, to be open about our experiences as best as we can and talk to our families. When I was talking to my brother the other day, I was talking to him, and he's like, Matt, do you remember this one time you came home and you were sleeping on my couch? I put a blanket on you. You like jumped up in like fight mode, and I thought you were going to beat the shit out of me. And I was like, I don't remember that at all. He's like, I was scared. Like I was physically scared when that happened, and if we don't talk to our families about some of the things we've been through and let them know, like, no, that's just a response, like once I come to, like, I'll be good, like talk to me about it and talk to your families and talk to your friends. And there's nothing wrong with talking about your experiences. It was very hard for me to start publicly speaking out about these things. But the more I've done it, the more I've had people come over and tell me that, through sharing my experiences and the different things that I've been through, it's really helped them. And it's been a struggle throughout my life. It's been a struggle throughout my military career, relationship wise. I'm pretty sure half of that ruined my marriage. But being able to tell stories of what you've been through and how it affects you to me is huge to be able to reach out and get that out there to the public.
For sure.
And so that's one thing that if I could just impress on people after this entire conversation is if you have a family member that's been in and they don't want to open up to you, that's fine. Don't pressure them on it. But when they do, just listen. They're not telling you these things because they want you to feel sorry for them. They just want you to understand some of the things they've been through. And if you don't understand it, that's fine. Like it's not a big deal, but being able to get that level of understanding so that you can understand what they're going through at the same time, or that you can at least appreciate or empathize with it. It's huge. Absolutely huge.
For sure. Yeah. I think the mental health aspect is something that we're probably doing better with now, than we were 15 years ago. I think it's more, obviously it's been identified. Guys are coming back with I know exactly what you're talking about. My ex-wife would not wake me up on the couch,
Right.
or she wouldn't wake me up at all because I would do the same thing. I would just like swing or do something, as I was getting, she would like poke me with a broom or throw a pillow at me to wake me up. She didn't want to be close to me when I got up because of that same thing. I would have a reaction. I don't think I do that anymore, but in the military, it's like when you're doing these deployments and stuff, your mind gets set in a certain way and it's just kind of how it goes after that. And I like the fact that you're saying that, people need to come out and talk about their service. And my take on that has always been, I'm pretty open with what I did. Obviously I have a podcast, but
Right.
even before the podcast, when I first got out of the Marine Corps and I started school at the community college up by Camp Pendleton. If people ask me questions, I'm like, hey, this is what happened. This is what I did in the Marine Corps. This is because to me, it's like there's this stigma out there that everyone's on the edge of losing it. All these veterans are on the edge of losing it and they're all crazy. And we could all snap at any point. And I wanted to spread the word that it's like, bro, like 1% of the population joins the military and like 1% of those actually see combat.
Right.
It's like, it's such a small amount of people that the stigma, there's no reason for that stigma to be there. And that small amount of people, though, it's on them to kind of share their experiences because a closed mouth never gets fed. You know what I'm saying? If you don't tell anybody what's going on, then how are they ever supposed to help you or even try to understand or empathize with you when you keep them completely locked out? And I've had a few guys tell me that have been guests on the podcast that doing, the podcast itself was kind of a therapeutic thing for them. And,
Sure.
and then afterwards, for days or weeks, even for some people told me that it would just dig up old memories that they had forgotten about, of their buddy, and good memories too, good and bad, and it's like, you got to let that stuff out because once you leave the military, you're not surrounded by, your veterans and other military members, and you go back out into the real world where no one understands anything that you've ever done. They can never understand that.
Right.
It's like, there's no buy-in, there's no more drafts, so there's no buy-in. So the general public has no idea what we do, and it doesn't really impact them that much because 1% of us are actually doing it.
And it reminds me of when I was interviewing to be like a police officer, like before I got the job, I went in for my chief's interview and the chief was like, hey man, I really respect the hell out of you and everything that you did, but I got a buddy that was a sergeant major in the Marines. And he told me that you don't go through the type of shit that you go through or have been through without having some life problems. And the way I broke it down to the chief was I told him, I was like, look, man, like, yeah, I've been through a lot of shit. Obviously it has an impact on me, but it's nothing more than I would say an impact on maybe some of your senior officers go through.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a lot of the stuff that they see that they're exposed to all the time, like they're constantly seeing bodies. They're, some of them getting shootouts, some, like everybody has bad experiences, throughout law enforcement. And so the way I broke it down to the chief was like, you're essentially getting a senior, a guy with the mentality of a senior officer that's going out onto the force. So you're not going to have somebody that's freaking out all the time over the littlest shit. You have somebody that has the ability to think through those situations. It's not like something you see on Grey's Anatomy where I'm out like beating my spouse every night. You know what I mean? And like drinking myself into a stupor because I had a bad memory. And being able to get that information out there, that stigma, like, dude, your combat vets actually do make good police officers. They make good firefighters. They make good business managers. They make all these things because your ability to think through situations that some people find extremely stressful just aren't to you. It's just a whatever.
Yeah, that's why I said I'm everyone that, or a lot of people at school that meet me are like, dude, you're super relaxed. It's like, dude, because none of this is stressful. Like this is all pretty simple stuff. And I say that with the point of view, I think it was on Joe Rogan or someone, either he said it or someone else said it. It's like the worst thing you've ever done is the worst thing you've ever done. Like if that's your experience, and if the worst thing you've ever done was like me, I'm dealing with college kids, is go have a shitty fast food job or something like that.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just a weird thing. You know what I'm saying? And you know what I'm talking about, but I like the podcast, and I like that military podcast becoming more popular because it's allowing a couple things. One, it's allowing people to voice what they saw, what actually occurred, what war was like, if they were actually in combat, or what it was not. What they thought it might have been, but it turned out to not be like that. So it gives that, so we get this perspective out there, which is great. Two, and the most important thing, in my opinion, is like now your story is now recorded, for forever. It's on the internet. It's forever now.
Right.
And in 20 years, maybe this audio file is still floating around the internet. someone in your family can go, hey, what did, grandpa do, or what did dad do? And,
Sure.
and go back and listen to you talk about your experiences and what it was actually like for you. And I just think that's an invaluable for our culture,
Absolutely.
and our just the record keeping of our history and stuff,
Absolutely. And I've like serving in top tier units and doing some things that affected national policy and being out there and just running and hitting things. If I'm man enough to admit that that crap affected me and I needed to get help, and that it's not a career ender, it's not a life ender or anything like that, I hope that inspires people to know that, like not everybody is a superhuman, and events will affect you in a certain way. And it's not an issue to go out and get help. And it's not something that you should be ashamed of or hide from your family. If anything, talking to your family about it gives them a better understanding of what it is, how you function on a daily basis.
For sure. I'm sure most people's families would prefer to have someone that shows, some kind of emotion rather than someone that keeps everything bottled in and doesn't talk about anything, but they're just sitting around being pissed or depressed or whatever all the time because they don't want to talk about it.
Yeah,
Show some emotion and let crack the door a little bit. Let someone in on you, to understand you a little bit better than you're allowing them to.
yeah, I've caught a lot of shade, so to speak, from like my community. On Fridays on my Instagram, I do something called a Firefight Friday, which is going to upload in I don't know, what time is it now?
12:30
Pacific. A couple hours from now, I'm going to upload, a firefight story. And then at the end of it, I talk about my experiences and what that's like put me through and all of that. And I think it's super important to get that information out there so people understand what it is you've been through and what it is other vets have been through. Because even if they're not comfortable talking about it, I'm not. I'm super nervous every time I do it, and I'm super nervous every time I hit that upload button.
Mm-hmm.
But having people hear those stories and understand them gives such a better insight. And I've had people say like, "Hey, man, that's talked me off a ledge." Like, thank you for doing that. And it's not something that we as a community should be ashamed of by any means, or it's not something that we should, feel less manly about by any means. There's only so much that one human being can take, so don't be ashamed of it and talk to people. Like most of the time people are just ashamed to get help, or they think they're a lesser human being, or that they're weak, or, because you and me could have been through the same experience and it could affect me, but it wouldn't affect you, or vice versa.
Yeah. Or they could be thinking that they're the quiet professional and they just don't want to talk about it. But I think that's kind of a asinine idea in 2021 where, you're a quiet professional, right? You discuss your deployments and some of the stuff you've done, but all the important shit, as we saw multiple times during this interview, you're not going to get into that because you understand the implications of maybe saying the wrong thing,
Right.
Which is to me, that's what a quiet professional is. A quiet professional doesn't mean you don't ever get to tell your story or no one ever knows what you did, because I think a lot of times people should know a lot of, what people did and have an understanding of what the military is actually like. I mean, if anything, the taxpayers should be demanding where their money's going and how that money's being utilized to train and deploy people. So
Exactly.
That's just my take, though.
No, that's a good take on it, man. And if anything, you should be proud. Like I wish I could spend more time with you and tell you stories about some of my friends that I've lost over the years and some of just the amazing things that these guys did for like God and country. And it's just it's one of those things that people need to hear about, that they need to hear about, and they need to understand the sacrifice that a lot of people in this country have made on their behalf, not only for their country but also for these other people that they don't even know.
Yeah.
Some of these people we're talking about are just absolute heroes, and nobody knows their names, because they were made a blip, and they're doing it for people that they don't know, and that is absolutely incredible. And for people not to know that is just, it's a shame.
It is. It is. I think I talk about it a lot in the early episodes of the podcast where, it's like what you see is like an average dude just walking down the street could be some dude that has done so many crazy things. And a good example of that is one of the early episodes that I did with the gentleman. Let me pull up his actual name. I feel bad I don't have it offhand. I would see him walk in my neighborhood all the time. I lived down in Oceanside by the beach, and I would see him walking down to the beach, and I thought he was just like an older like beach bum dude. He would just go walk by the beach and shit. Now I was talking to my neighbor. My neighbor knew I had a podcast, and he had lived in that neighborhood a while longer, and he knew the guy. He's like, yeah, he's Captain Jerry Geller is his name, episode 12. He's like, he was in the Marine Corps. I was like, oh, really? Like, what did he do? He's like, he was a fighter pilot in Vietnam, and he got shot down. I'm like, what? And he's like, yeah, dude, I'll introduce you. And the dude comes over one time and we just all bullshitting. He's like 95% blind because when he was on a bombing run on like an enemy mortar position or something like that, he got shot down and his aircraft hit all these trees and the canopy was destroyed by the tree branches and blinded him, like hitting him in the face as he's hit.
Sure,
and he ejects at the last second and got out of it and survived it, but he's almost completely blind. But he'd never let it stop him, though. This dude's walking down to the beach by himself, and I didn't even know he was blind. He doesn't have one of the canes, that blind people use or anything like that. He had just known that path so well that he could get back and forth using the senses that he still had. And it's like...
That's awesome.
And days before, I thought this dude is just some beach bum that just living in Oceanside walking to the beach. And it turns out he was an F-4 Phantom pilot that gets shot down in Vietnam and, got injured pretty badly, obviously, came back to the United States. And it's like, unless anyone ever asked, like, who's going to know that story? So I'm glad I was able to record his story and upload it to the podcast and stuff like that. And I think people really enjoyed that. But you're right. That's what it's all about, man, is getting stories out there. And we've been kind of going on for a little bit, rambling on. So I'll wrap it up here. But
yeah.
I appreciate you coming on, man. I want people to check out your Instagram page. It's AngerTab, ANGERTAB on Instagram. Are you on any other social media that you want to put out there?
No, that's where I stick.
Cool.
Yeah.
And then I did have a couple last second comments. One was from Emma Kern Dolazal. I probably pronounced it wrong, and I'm sorry. She said, respect and regard from Croatia. So thank you for the people of Croatia that are tuning into the podcast. And then, yeah, I know, right? And then LR said, nice having the Army on again. Of course, I know this is kind of a Marine-focused, and I want it to be a Marine-focused podcast, but that's just most of the people I know. I do have another soldier coming on here in a couple, like a week or two, who was a military police and earned 2 Bronze Stars. So tune in. Make sure you guys, if you're watching the podcast, you are subscribing. Make sure you're giving me a thumbs up on the YouTube channel. Bronze Stars with a V. Let me put that caveat out there that it wasn't just a Bronze Stars. 2 Bronze Stars with a V. I saw the look on your face. I saw the smile like, oh, shit. In the Marine Corps, we joke about the Army giving out Bronze Stars for like everything.
Oh, it's sad, man. They give them out for nothing, man. Like I had a supply sergeant get one time, and I'm just like, dude never even left at base. He was actually like ordering TVs and sending them back home that we found out beforehand. Just like absolute dirtbag. He got a Bronze Star, but I couldn't get guys like, awards for valor because Sergeant Major said they're just doing their job. I don't judge folks listening. Don't judge people based off their awards and accolades. For sure. Like it's. Yeah.
I'm interested to hear his story. So he'll be on. So we do have some more Army guys coming on, and I'm always down for Army, Air Force, Navy. If anybody out there is listening, they know someone that has a cool story or a story that should get out there, hit me up on Instagram at Former Action Guys or at J Kramer Graphics. Both those are my Instagram. Shoot me a message and we'll set something up just like we did here. This was a random meet, and again, I think this podcast went really well considering that we had sent like 2 texts to each other. And like 5 minutes before we even started, and we went this far with it. So appreciate.
That's true, man.
I'll definitely have you come back on, and we'll talk about some more stories, and we'll do another live stream so people can ask some more questions. Vortex Rex just put on there, great interview. I appreciate you both. Simplify. Thanks for checking out the podcast, and that's it for me. Enjoy your day, I guess.
Yeah, you too, brother. It was good talking to you, man. Look forward to coming back. Man.
All right, everyone. Yeah. And all right, and we're stopped. All right, man. Hey, thanks. Like I said, thanks again. I'll probably do a quick edit of this audio, video, like add in something at the beginning, add like my actual intro, and then upload it today. Nah, I'll probably wait and upload this on Sunday because nobody's going to listen to it on a Friday afternoon. So I'll probably wait and upload this on Sunday. So you can probably expect it to be out there, but I'll put it on Instagram. I'll tag you and all that stuff. For sure. All right, man. Well, thanks again. I'll tell Chris, thanks again for introducing us. And next time, we can get into some more stories, maybe talk about some of your law enforcement time and some of the training and stuff you did there. All right. Sounds good, man. Have a good weekend. Later.